Chapter 220. Amidst the vibrations in the air, the blade of the snake belly sword that soared into the sky began to connect head to tail. Like an Ouroboros biting its tail, it formed a ring and began to rotate at high speed. Wung wung. The sword ring, with a diameter of more than 3 meters, emitted a sharp buzzing sound, causing the surrounding air to be stirred up like muddy water, causing the air to change color. It was a dark blue color that represented death. This dark blue sword ring that represented death spun crazily while stirring up the air, creating a strong wind as it floated above its owner's head. What is that? The expressions of Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, Ya, 9-layer Totoro, and the others changed drastically. Let me, as your teacher, teach you a lesson. Just like holding the crazily rotating sword ring, Moonlit Glass Hair raised the snake belly sword that only had its hilt left, and a ferocious smile hung on his face. Once a surpasser reaches level 4, they will be able to release the true power hidden within the blaze fang. Just like mine. Amidst the wild laughter, an abnormally violent air current suddenly rippled above Moonlit Glass Hair. As the violent airflow became more and more violent, traces of substantial blue ripples rippled out from the sword edge ring above the Moonlight Glass Rabbit. In the end, the ripples wrapped around the sword edge ring and began to revolve crazily. A gale emerged and swept out in all directions. The gale was so fierce that even some of the larger rocks on the ground were blown away, causing the expressions of Ivanli, Julie, and the others to change abruptly. Their faces were filled with horror. Facing such power, Noah, who was kneeling on the ground with one knee, silently stood up. His dark eyes released a rare burning desire for battle. The true power of the blaze fang you speak of. Saying this, Noah tensed up his body and took a large stride forward. Like a longbow, he clenched his fist and suddenly pulled it behind him. Let me have a look. Seeing Noah's posture, Ivanli, Julie, and 9-layer Totoro were shocked. Wung. In the next moment, the space around the fist that Noah had pulled behind him suddenly shook. Specks of dazzling golden light appeared and gathered on it. Not long after, it condensed into a golden vortex that suddenly rotated. Seeing this scene, Ujimli Rabbit's pupils instantly shrank to the size of a pinhole, but soon revealed a fanatical smile, feeling that the blood in his body was boiling at this moment. It had been a long time since Tsukujijiri Bunny had experienced this kind of blood-boiling feeling. Ha! Come on! Laughing loudly, the airflow above the Moonlight Glass Rabbit's head became more and more chaotic, and the sword ring spun even more crazily. In the end, only a faint blue ring of light could be seen floating there. Looking at the blue light that almost filled the entire arena, Noah clenched his fist even tighter. Suddenly, the whirlpool around Noah's fist became violent, causing the atmosphere to slightly distort. Let's decide the victor. Exception. Tsukujijiri Bunny's arm fiercely shook, and the snake belly sword's hilt pointed to the sky, causing the sword ring floating above to make a whooshing sound. Immediately, Tsukujijiri Bunny suddenly swung the snake belly sword's hilt down. Bite him to death. Crazy snake ring. Amidst the loud shout, the crazy snake ring floating above Tsukujijiri Bunny's head was like an erupting volcano. It trembled, and with an incomparably sharp and ear-piercing explosion and a bright blue light, it cut through the air and shot towards Noah in front of it. Caw-caw. Wherever the blue light passed, the ground cracked inch by inch and stirred up the air. It was mixed with the aura of death as it shot past. Noah's pitch-black pupils were almost completely covered by the blue resplendent radiance. As the target of the wild snake ring, Noah could clearly feel the terrifying power contained within the blue sword ring. With that kind of power, he believed that even if it was a building, it would definitely be cut in half. However, Noah's heart was strangely calm. He did not choose to release the power of limit, nor did he choose to dodge. Because, the victor, it will only be me. Slowly taking a step forward, the veins on Noah's arm were like wriggling little snakes. In an instant they sharply swelled up, causing the whirlpool around his fist to suddenly expand. Send it flying. Destroy it. Almost as if in response to Noah, a burst of golden light that was of the same origin as the whirlpool around Noah's fist converged under Noah's feet. Immediately after, it suddenly exploded, shaking up a violent force, causing Noah to turn into a stream of light. With an irresistible force, it violently shot out. The distance between the gorgeous stream of light and the blue halo was instantly closed. Soon after, two terrifying attacks that seemed to be able to burn mountains and boil seas collided with each other, like meteorites under the abruptly tensed nerves of the group of spectators. Heaven and earth suddenly became silent. But not long after, in the center of the collision between the stream of light and the halo, a violent shockwave erupted. Bang! The silence that lasted for only a moment was completely gone. Like a catastrophe, the shockwave exploded in the center of the collision like an explosion. The terrifying shockwave seemed to be able to cross the heaven and earth, causing the atmosphere to become dry and scorching. Like a storm descending from the sky, ripples blew in all directions. Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Ya hurriedly raised their hands, subconsciously blocking in front of them, but their bodies were blown back again and again. Gu. In order to protect Kukui Hokasaki, Ninefold Totoro hurriedly hugged him, but because of this, his body became unstable and was tragically directly blown away, crashing into a tree trunk at the side. And when the spectators were unable to protect themselves, in the frenzied shockwave that pervaded the entire area, a figure violently retreated from it. His figure was slightly embarrassed, and his hand was still holding the snake belly sword that only had the hilt left. He gritted his teeth, withstood the chaotic airflow that was blowing towards him, and tried his best to stabilize his body. That was of course Moonlit Glass Hair. The next moment, a sharp sound of wind breaking resounded, causing Moonlit Glass Hair to raise his slightly embarrassed face. At the same time, the shockwave that pervaded the sky suddenly squirmed, and a figure violently rushed out from it. His figure was also extremely embarrassed. However, in a situation where even his clothes had become tattered, the existence that rushed out from the shockwave still had a pair of deep eyes rolling with scorching battle intent. He raised his fist that was still spinning with a golden vortex, and the gorgeous brilliance under his feet shook. His figure turned into a golden light, and fiercely chased after Moonlit Glass Hair, who was retreating. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Moonlit Glass Hair. Exception. As Yu Jianlitu's expression changed drastically and she screamed, a fierce light flashed in Noah's eyes. On his fist, a beautiful vortex of air surged crazily. It was mixed with an incomparably ferocious shockwave. Under Yu Jianlitu's shocked gaze, it heavily landed on her abdomen. Bang! A low muffled explosion that made one's heart tighten reverberated in the air above the entire square. Ugh! Receiving such a heavy blow without any defense, Moonlit Glass Hair involuntarily let out a muffled cry. His figure was like a bird that had its wings broken, or a kite that had its string broken, as he flew backwards. Bang! In the end, Moonlit Glass Hair fiercely smashed into the ground not far away, smashing a deep hole in the ground, stirring up thick smoke that covered the deep hole in his body. Ha! 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 Landing from midair, Noah, who stood steadily on the ground, his chest undulating as he panted heavily. His fist that had dispersed the vortex of air seeped out blood, dripping onto the ground. His arm was still trembling. Obviously, in the clash with the crazy snake ring, just now Noah, who had exhausted all his strength to use the annihilation strike, had also suffered quite a bit of damage. However, for a rank I to challenge a rank V, and only receive this amount of damage, it was already something worth celebrating. Not far away, Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, Ya, 9 Layers Totoro and the others looked at the constantly panting Noah, as if they had yet to wake up from the frightening collision just now, and did not speak for a long time. Chapter 221. At night, in the school's healthcare room, Noah, who was sitting on the hospital bed, stretched out his hand, which was slightly injured after using Annihilation Strike against Sakujiri Bunny's wild snake ring. Blood was still seeping out of his hand. He held it flat in front of him. In front of Noah, Ivan used a bandage to wrap around Noah's outstretched hand, bandaging Noah's hand until only his fingers were exposed. The palm and the back of his hand were all wrapped under the bandage. After a while he finished. Ivan seemed to have never done such a job before. He held Noah's bandaged hand and looked back and forth. Is this all right? It's not a big injury. There's no need to wrap it so carefully. Noah took back his hand and moved his palm slightly. What's more, after being strengthened by the daybreak star pattern, the recovery ability is also very amazing. This kind of injury should be healed in a few days, right? In fact, if Noah did not use the limit ability to suppress all his abilities, no matter how serious the injury, it would be healed in an instant. After all, Noah's body has already been strengthened by who knows how many times the protozoa virus has strengthened his body. Even if it's a broken hand or a broken leg, it may be able to recover. Therefore, for Noah, this kind of injury, which was equivalent to a broken skin, was really nothing. But Noah raised his other hand and looked at the bandage wrapped around the other hand, except for the 5 fingers, and laughed bitterly. This way, both of my hands are wrapped in bandages. People who don't know will think that I'm seriously injured. The bandage on his left hand was to cover up the scars from when he was a child. At that time, Noah had not been strengthened by the protozoa virus. Therefore, unless Noah directly cut off all the scars on his left hand, the scars would not disappear even if he released his body's regenerative ability. Fortunately, the injury on his right hand was not to the point where it would leave a scar. It should be healed in a few days. Noah, Julie approached, her deep red eyes filled with concern. Are you okay? It's just a small wound. Noah shook his head and rubbed Julie's head lovingly with his bandaged hand. Don't worry. Yeah. I can't believe you can still be so carefree. Ivan sighed. Don't forget we were almost killed. Ivanli's words caused the atmosphere in the room to become heavy. After defeating the moonlit glass rabbit, 9-layer Torrance decided to hand the opponent over to the academy and leave with the moonlit glass rabbit. Koei Tokasaki was entrusted to Noah's group by the 9-fold Tokusatsu. She was brought to the infirmary by Noah's group. Now, she was lying on another bed with bandages all over her body. Therefore, in the infirmary, other than 9-layer Torrance who brought the moonlit glass rabbit to the academy, the rest of the people who were present were here, including Noah who came to bandage the wound on his hand, Ivanli who helped Noah bandage his wound, Julie, Orange Bar, Enya. In the end, why did teacher Tsukini attack us students? You asked worriedly. She said it was work or something. What does that mean? Teacher Tsukini seems to have said that she wanted to get rid of some promising students. Orange Bar analyzed seriously. Could it be the actions of some criminal organization that has something against the Dawn organization? This wasn't impossible. The Dawn organization was a research organization on the surface, but the content of their research was the Dawn star pattern, which could turn humans into surpassers with extraordinary power. Of course, it was impossible for the country not to covet surpassers with extraordinary power. Therefore, the Dawn organization was also secretly involved in the security work of the country. The surpassers who graduated from Haolang Academy would be invited to join the Dawn organization and become a member of the security force of the Dawn organization. They would work for the country in the Dawn organization. It was also because of this that the project of the Dawn organization that Noah saw when he hacked into the country's database was classified. It was because the Dawn organization was a secret force hidden by the country and had a close relationship with the country. Naturally, a lot of criminal gangs couldn't stand the existence of the Dawn organization's security force. It was an object that could pose a serious threat to them. In this way, it was reasonable for a criminal gang to deliberately arrange for people to infiltrate the academy and get rid of promising students who might become the core members of the security force in the future. Ivanli, Julie, and you seemed to agree with Orange Bar's words and nodded one after another. Only Noah had a mocking smile on his face. Work. In the director's office of the academy, a man in a suit closed a document with a blank expression and ended his report. The above is the report of this time's new blade battle. Sitting at a luxurious desk in front of the man in the suit was a girl in a dark gothic lowly costume. She was the director of the academy. 99 Lunar Nights closed her eyes slightly, as if she was digesting the information reported by the man in the suit. Sangua, how is Glass Rabbit? The injury is very serious. The man in the suit named Sangua said calmly. Even with the recovery ability of rank V, if you want to recover, It will take a long time, right? Is that so? 99 Lunar Nights murmured. It's really surprising. Are you talking about the exception? Sangua's expressionless face also showed a look of surprise. It's really surprising. Not only did he defeat Daisuke with the strength of an ordinary person, but he also defeated Daisuke when he was at rank I. That's an opponent who even released Blaze. The gap between each rank was very large. Just a small difference of one rank, but the difference in ability was several times more than what it was before. A difference of one rank was already like this. If there was a difference of 2 ranks, then the difference couldn't be said to be hopeless, but it was clearly palpitating. In this way, in a situation where there was a difference of 4 ranks, he still defeated a high-ranked opponent. Moreover, it was an opponent who released the true strength of Blaze. Anyone would be surprised. Almost every year, we will arrange for a rank 3 to snipe the more outstanding students in the new Blade Battle of the Freshmen, using a more violent method to test and promote the growth of these students. Sangwa pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. Logically speaking, it is impossible for a newly born rank I to defeat a rank 3. In the past, the only one who was able to defeat a rank 3 was the special. However, even the special was only able to defeat a rank 3 when he was at rank I by relying on his special Blaze. The special, on the other hand, was able to defeat a rank 3 with the strength of a normal person. In order to give him a bigger test, I specially allowed Glass Rabbit to not suppress her strength to rank 3. She could use a little bit of her true ability. 99 Lunar Nights' eyes flashed. In the end, the level V, who used all his strength, was defeated by a level 1. 99 Lunar Nights obviously knew that if he didn't have the Annihilation Strike and the Great Leap that he comprehended on the spot, then with Noah's rank I strength, there was absolutely no way he could defeat a rank V who released the true strength of Blaze. However, in the end, relying on the strength of the Annihilation Strike and Great Leap, Noah still defeated rank V. This was an indisputable fact. Speaking of that special, there is news from England. Sangwa suddenly opened his mouth and said, "It is said that the young miss has already left her sister's school in England and boarded a helicopter to head over here." 99 Lunar Night's hand movements slightly paused, and he somewhat helplessly smiled. It must be because she knew that there were 2 of her kind here, so she impatiently rushed over? After all, that young miss is quite willful. Sangwa slightly lowered his head. Moreover, perhaps that young lady is here because of that exception? That's true. 99 Lunar Nights let out a somewhat joyful laugh. The exception and the special, they are the real kind. Chapter 222. A cold breeze blew in from afar, hitting the balcony outside the dormitory lounge, causing the air to become slightly chilly, causing people to involuntarily shiver. At a certain moment, the door to the balcony was opened, and Noah walked out from the bustling lounge. He came to the balcony and looked into the distance. Although the academy was not brightly lit at night, there were still lights flashing everywhere. From afar, Noah could see that some people were working in some corners of the academy, restoring some potholes and damaged areas to their original state. The damaged areas were all caused by the first years in the academy during today's new blade battle. Some of the damaged areas were relatively small and would probably be restored by tomorrow. Some of the damaged areas were relatively large, and even if Noah and the others went to school, they might not be able to be restored. Looking at the people who were working in various corners, Noah raised his right hand, that was wrapped in bandages, and shifted his gaze to it. In the battle with the Moonlight Glass Rabbit, Noah only received a superficial wound on his hand, but the harvest was huge. Leap forward. This skill was comprehended by using the principle of Annihilation Strike, which allowed Noah's speed to soar who knows how many times. This harvest was indeed huge. After all, whether it was Annihilation Strike or Leap Forward, they all relied on the principle of the shockwave to be used. And the power of the shockwave was completely dependent on how much power the user could mobilize. That is to say, Annihilation Strike and Leap Forward. Even if Noah released all the power in his body, they would still be very useful. If Noah used Annihilation Strike and Leap Forward, with his real physical strength, the effect should be extremely terrifying, right? Annihilation Strike could give Noah extreme strength. Leap Forward could give Noah extreme speed. These two abilities could greatly increase Noah's strength. Being able to secretly learn and improve Annihilation Strike from 9-layer penetrations was already a good harvest. In addition to the leap forward that he learned, was it not worth it to pay a small price for it? And this experience also allowed Noah to see another benefit of limit. As long as he could use the ability limit flexibly, the chances of learning a new ability or new skill at a critical moment like today would greatly increase. Although it was very likely that there would be dangers in the future after deliberately limit the power, but the amount of effort, the amount of reward, this could be considered a rather risky benefit. In order to use limit flexibly, I must hone this ability. After coming to such a conclusion, Noah clenched his fist, because he felt that he was indeed growing, and revealed a happy smile. At this moment, a soft voice sounded from behind Noah. "It's a bit cold. What are you doing in this place?" Saying such a sentence, the owner of the voice came to Noah's side, and together with Noah, they looked into the distance. The brown ponytail behind him swayed in the breeze, and Ivanley's gem-like eyes seemed to be blooming in the dark night, making Noah could not help but look. With this glance, Noah also saw Ivanley's somewhat complicated expression. "What's wrong?" Without thinking, Noah asked, "Is there something on your mind?" "Something on your mind?" Ivanley showed a wry smile. "But you, after experiencing today's events, you actually did not have any reaction. Isn't that strange?" Hearing this, Noah was silent. Obviously, Ivanley was concerned about today's events. Although he did not know what the so-called work that Eugenely Rabbit mentioned was, but it was a fact that the students in the school were being targeted. Even if not all of the students were good, being targeted by people who could take your life at any time, that feeling was not something that ordinary people could understand. Before Ivanley was implanted with the Dawn Star rune and became a surpasser, before entering this school, she was just an ordinary girl studying in an ordinary middle school. Now, knowing that her life was being targeted by some people in this school, ordinary people would definitely choose to drop out of school. Ivanley did not make this choice in the first place, but that did not mean that Ivanley was not afraid. But even so, Ivanley still did not choose to leave the school immediately, and now, because of this matter, she was still worried. Noah could only think of one possibility. "Is there a reason?" Noah looked into the distance without looking back and said softly, "Is there a reason that you must stay here?" This time, it was Ivanley's turn to be silent. After a long while, Ivanley's voice sounded again, pretending to be spirited. "Although I don't really want people to know, especially Noah, but as expected, if I don't pour my heart out a little, I might not be able to sleep tonight." After saying that, Ivan's next sentence made everyone doubt their ears. "I want to make money. Make a lot of money." The extremely unscrupulous answer made Noah stunned, and his face also showed a surprised expression. Of course, being surprised was just being surprised, but Noah still chose not to interrupt. Although he only knew Ivanley for about 2 weeks, Noah believed that he knew Ivanley quite well. Therefore, Ivanley should have her reasons for saying such words. "My family actually has a small factory, and the operating situation is not so optimistic, but rather, it is very difficult." Ivanley seemed to be aware of Noah's thoughts. She smiled very gently, and said in a very distant tone, "The people around us have been advising us to close the factory as soon as possible. If we continue to operate it without experience, it will only bring an unimaginable burden to the family. However, my father is unwilling to give up this factory that my late grandfather built with his life. He has been working hard until now. I love my grandfather very much." Ivanley's voice seemed to be very far away, but when she said this sentence, she was unusually determined. "So, I also support my father's idea of keeping the factory, and I really want to help even a little." Hearing this, Noah remembered. On the first day of school, when the news that every student would receive 100,000 yen a month for living expenses came out, Ivanley immediately asked if she could send the living expenses back home. Was it because of this reason? Not only that, This should be the reason why I vainly stayed in this school. Only 1 out of 1,000 people will have the ability to adapt to the daybreak star pattern and become a surpasser. The number of surpassers who can study in the academy for 3 years and graduate after 3 years of training are even fewer, Noah said with relief. But the Dawn organization's security force can only be joined by those who graduated from the school, which makes people very precious. In order to keep as many surpassers as possible, the Dawn organization's security force member's salary is surprisingly high. That's why I came. I vainly smiled with relief. As long as I join the Dawn organization after graduation and become a member of the security force, I will be able to earn enough income to rebuild the factory. And now, the school also accepted my request and remitted more than half of the monthly living expenses to my family account. It can be said that only by staying here, I can achieve my goal and revitalize my family's factory. Coming here, I don't regret at all. Ivanley's eyes slightly dimmed. But I'm afraid that I won't be able to survive in this environment. Ivanley was afraid that he would be killed like today. But what Ivanley was really afraid of was not death. But if he died, he would not be able to achieve his goal of revitalizing his family business. It was because of this that Ivan was so worried. Noah, who understood everything, suddenly smiled. Ivanley will be fine. Ivanley was stunned. Don't be afraid. Noah showed a gentle tone. I will protect Ivanley. Ivanley looked at Noah in a daze. After a while he finally smiled. Then, Ivanley slightly moved closer to Noah and leaned his head on Noah's shoulder. Thank you. Noah shook his head and continued to look into the distance. The night was still going on. Chapter 223. The school's cafeteria felt more like a restaurant than a cafeteria. It wasn't that the school's cafeteria was high-end. It was just that the students in the school would choose to have a drink, or even black tea after eating here. They would sit together before class and chat about everything, giving people the atmosphere of a cafeteria. Studying in this school was free of tuition, food, and accommodation expenses. Therefore, no one would worry about whether to drink a cup of tea or order a dessert in order to save money. Naturally, the students were also happy to gather here to enjoy the leisure after a meal. Some people had already started their daily dessert time, while others were still eating breakfast. At a certain moment, most of the eyes in the cafeteria were focused on the entrance of the cafeteria. He's here, he's here. He's the exception, right? The famous one among the freshmen. He's a bit handsome. Amidst the rustling of conversation, Noah, who was in uniform, walked in from the outside. Under the gazes of almost everyone present at the same time, he walked in calmly while sighing in his heart. Noah had long been used to being the center of attention. After all, in the world of the Dark Bullet, because of his identity as the Cursed Child's shelter, Noah's existence was widely known in every sense of the word. No matter where he went, as long as someone recognized him, he would be the center of attention. However, in that world where there were people who rejected the Cursed Child, most of the time, Noah received the kind of attention that was full of malice. Compared to those full of malice, the students in the school mostly looked at Noah with curiosity, and there were very few with malice. For Noah, who was used to the malice of others, the attention of the students in the school was more comfortable. However, if possible, Noah really didn't want to be watched while eating. He believed that even if it was another person, the other person would definitely have the same idea. Although he said so, even if he cared, he couldn't do anything. Therefore, as long as there was no problem, they could just walk over in a dignified manner. With this thought in mind, Noah walked to the dining area as if nothing had happened. The school cafeteria basically provided 3 types of meals. First was Set A, which consisted of white rice and meat. The second was Set B, which consisted of white rice and fish. Finally, there was a buffet where they could choose their favorite side dishes from a total of 50 types of food, including Japanese, Western, and Chinese. Although Set A and Set B were carefully designed by the staff in charge of nutrition management in the cafeteria, the free choice of the buffet was undoubtedly more popular. Nearly half of the students only put the dishes they liked on their plates, without considering whether the nutrition was balanced or not. Noah wasn't particularly picky about food, but it was also a kind of happiness to be able to choose the dishes he liked. In this regard, Noah would not treat himself unfairly. At that moment, Noah took one of the Japanese, Western, and Chinese dishes that he liked. Then he added a bowl of white rice and a bowl of miso soup. With this meal that was neither Chinese nor Western, he found a seat and sat down. Found it, found it. At this time, a slightly cheerful voice sounded behind Noah. He saw, led by Ivanly, Julie, Orange, Ye, and other girls who had a good relationship with each other, holding plates in their hands. Under Ivanly's command, they walked towards Noah together. Whether it was Ivanly, Julie, Orange, or Ye, they were all very good-looking girls. These 4 girls gathered together. Suddenly, the same treatment as Noah just now was taken care of on this group of girls, attracting the attention of almost everyone in the cafeteria. Unfortunately, unlike the curiosity that occupied most of the eyes when looking at Noah just now, this time, there was no curiosity in the eyes of the girls, only amazement. Then when the group of girls all sat down around Noah, their gazes changed from amazement to envy. Of course, this envy was directed at Noah. Without asking if Noah agreed or not, Ivanly and Julie sat on Noah's left and right respectively. Orange and Ye hesitated for a moment, then sat down opposite Noah and Ivanly. Ivanly just sat down, glancing at the dishes on Noah's plate, and made such a sound. As expected of a guy, he really eats a lot. Noah took a bowl of white rice, 3 dishes, and a bowl of miso soup. Among them, the 3 dishes almost filled up a small plate. Ivanly, Julie, Orange, and Ye all only took 2 dishes that could fill up a small plate. Apart from Orange, who added an extra bowl of white rice, Ivanly added soup, Julie added bread, and Ye added rice balls. Compared to Noah, who had filled 3 small plates, the girls, who had only filled 1 small plate, ate very little. Especially Julie, who overwhelmingly ate a lot less than the others. The small plate was basically filled with vegetables. So Julie looked at her plate, and then at Noah's plate. After a while she said dejectedly, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Should I eat more?" "Don't ask yourself to eat more." Noah reached out and habitually patted Julie's head. "As long as you can eat." "Ah." Julie nodded her head lightly. On the side, Ivanly, who was watching Noah and Julie's interaction, let out a light snort. "Noah, you're so good to Julie. If you look at it this way, you're just like Julie's brother." Orange had a knowing smile on his face. "Aren't you afraid of spoiling Julie?" "Why would I?" Noah replied unhappily. "You all know how strong Julie is, right? But it feels good to have someone dote on you." You couldn't help but blurt out as she watched Noah stroke Julie's head. Julie's face was expressionless, but the ahog on her head was swaying. She seemed to be very happy, and she couldn't help but blurt out, "Really, I'm so envious." "Envious?" Ivanly, Julie, and Orange looked at you strangely, which made you realize what she said. She blushed and lowered her head, almost burying it into the pair of huge softness in front of her chest. Seeing this, Noah smiled bitterly, but suddenly felt a pain in his ribs. Someone pinched him. "Humph." Ivanly nonchalantly picked up the soup and drank it mouthful by mouthful. Noah touched his ribs where he was pinched, and could only roll his eyes at Ivanly. Ever since that night, Ivanly poured out his heart's desire to Noah. Ivanly often did things similar to today. Sometimes, he would vent his anger on Noah over some small matter, and sometimes he would be abnormally happy because of Noah's careless and considerate actions. His mood was constantly changing. This naturally made the distance between Noah and Ivanly much closer, but it also made Noah suffer from some unknown pain from time to time. Thinking of Ivanly's confession that night, Noah couldn't help but look at Julie. After that day's experience of being attacked, Noah's group didn't choose to drop out of school because their lives were in danger. Ivanly insisted on staying because he needed to revitalize his family business. Orange Bar was the descendant of a martial arts family. Just being targeted was not enough to make the successor of the Orange 18 Arts Retreat. Although Ye's personality was a bit timid, she also wanted to prove herself to convince her to stay. But what about Julie? This child who seemed to need the most care. For what reason did she want to stay even if her life was in danger? Perhaps feeling Noah's gaze, Julie turned her head, and her deep red eyes met Noah's eyes. "Noah, it's nothing." Noah suppressed the doubts in his heart, patted Julie's head, and said to the group of girls, "Okay, let's hurry up and finish breakfast." Saying this, Noah's eyes burst out with a bright light. "Don't forget, we're going to upgrade the sublimation instrument today." Ivanly, Julie Orange Bar, and Ye's eyes lit up. They nodded and began to eat seriously. Chapter 224. Almost a week had passed since the end of the new blade battle. During this week, the teacher in charge of the first years, Sakudri Bunny, had taken a leave of absence due to some matters. Temporarily, a teacher named Three Kingdoms was teaching the first years. And this so-called leave of absence due to some matters was also what Three Kingdoms said when he came to substitute for the first years. Regarding this statement, Ivanly, Julie, Tachaba, Ye and Kyujituryu, who had witnessed the fierce battle between Noah and Sakudri Bunny on the day of the new blade battle, were full of doubts. Logically speaking, this kind of dangerous person who deliberately attacked and harmed the students of the school should be directly expelled by the school, or even locked up as a criminal. Now, what was this leave of absence due to some matters all about? This question troubled the group for an entire week. However, this did not include Noah. Noah maintained an indifferent attitude towards the Three Kingdoms statement from the beginning to the end. Even when the group of girls discussed this matter in private, Noah had always maintained an indifferent attitude, which made the group of girls puzzled. In a situation where they could not figure it out, the group of girls simply stopped thinking about this question and focused their attention on the other news brought by Three Kingdoms. According to what Sakudri Bunny said before, the tripping double blades, who achieved excellent results in the new blade battle, would have an additional chance to obtain the ascension ritual. On the first day of the first year's substitute class, in addition to bringing the news that Sakudri Bunny had taken a leave of absence due to some matters, the list of students who achieved excellent results in the new blade battle was also announced. Those who could obtain an additional chance to obtain the ascension ritual were only those who defeated 3 groups of tripping double blades in the new blade battle and obtained 3 or more victories. And those who obtained 3 victories in the new blade battle, Ivanly and Julie, Tachaba and Ye, Kyujituryu and Kyujituryu. These 3 pairs of tripping double blades were all on the list. As for Noah, it was even more unavoidable. Among the results announced by the Three Kingdoms, Noah had obtained 7 victories that made the hearts of those who heard it tighten. That was to say, he had defeated 7 sets of tripping double blades. If it wasn't for the appearance of Tsukujijiri hair midway, Ivan, Julie, Tachaba, and Ye who challenged Noah would definitely have been defeated. Furthermore, on that day, Kyuchi Tsukujijiri and Tsukujijiri Tokasaki would definitely have come looking for Noah. Then the result would very likely be 10 wins. Today was the day the Three Kingdoms announced for everyone to undergo the ascension ritual. Therefore, under the envious gazes of his classmates, Noah and his group went to the place where the sublimation ritual had already been prepared. As soon as they arrived at the scene, Noah and the others saw 2 other acquaintances who had arrived earlier. They were none other than Kajuryu Turyu and Uemi Tokasaki. "Uchi!" Juba exclaimed in surprise. "Have you been discharged?" Because of Noah's intervention, only Kue Tokasaki was injured by Suki Tori during the Battle of the New Blades. She was seriously injured and was sent to the hospital. With Kue Tokasaki's injuries, even if he was a rank-I surpasser and had his recovery enhanced, it shouldn't be enough for him to fully recover from his injuries in just a week. Humph. Kue Tokasaki crossed her arms and snorted softly before turning her head away. "I'm not weak enough to be bedridden because of an injury of that level. Let me translate for you." 9 Layers Flow scratched his cheek and said mischievously. According to the translation, because it was embarrassing to lie in bed all the time, he ignored other people's advice and forced himself to leave the hospital. Tisk. Kukui Tokasaki seemed to be extremely unhappy with the 9 Heavens Tokugawa, but he did not refute it. It was obvious that the 9 Heavens Tokugawa was right. Well. Ivanly put his hands behind his back and bent down slightly with a smile. "Actually, it's not a bad choice to leave the hospital. If he can successfully pass today's sublimation ritual and ascend to level 2, Thursday Chi classmates' recovery ability will be further strengthened. This way his injuries will heal faster, right? That's true. Juba nodded. Let's hope you can pass today's sublimation ritual. If your body and spirit don't reach the standard of sublimation, you will fail to sublimate even if you have the chance to go through the sublimation ritual. That was probably what Juba was trying to say. Yeah, the most timid and unconfident person was so nervous that she started sweating. No problem. On the other hand, Julie was the calmest person present. Everyone will definitely be able to successfully ascend. Everyone present nodded their heads and chose to believe in their own abilities. Noah quietly looked at Ninefold Totoro and couldn't help but recall the scene when Ninefold Totoro blocked the attack of Tsukida hair in order to protect Kuniyashi Hokusaki. To be more precise, it should be said that he recalled Ninefold Totoro's blaze shield. The type of blaze differed from person to person. Some people were swords. Some people were knives. Some people were bows. Some people were guns. They were all weapons with very simple structures. Without exception, the blaze that had appeared up until now all had 2 rules. First, the blaze was only a weapon. Second, the structure of the blaze was definitely not too complicated. Because the human soul itself was a very simple existence, it didn't have a complicated shape, nor did it have a complicated structure. Although the form of the shield wasn't complicated, it was still an existence that was beyond the scope of a weapon. For a soul that could only materialize into a weapon, it was already considered a very complicated form. Needless to say, a firearm like the pistol, even if it didn't break away from the scope of a weapon, its structure was so complicated that a simple soul couldn't materialize it. However, there were always exceptions to everything. The Daybreak Star tattoo that was implanted into the Surpasser's body contained the data of almost all weapons since ancient times. And a person's soul would also manifest different forms based on their own experiences, wishes, and other factors. Therefore, the Surpasser's soul would, under the influence of the Daybreak Star tattoo, choose the form most suitable for their existence from the Daybreak Star tattoo and materialize it. As a result, all kinds of different weapons were born. Noah's revolver was, for various reasons, Noah's weapon became the blaze. Even if this kind of example was even rarer than blaze being a pistol or a shield, to the point that it was impossible for anyone to reappear in the past or the future, it still couldn't be treated as an example of blaze having an abnormal form. But the Ninefold Totoro's shield was an exception to the blaze. Noah was a little curious. This guy who was called a special ability, why would the blaze be in the form of a shield? Perhaps this curiosity was because of the so-called same kind that Sakudri Bunny spoke of? But Noah's intuition told him, with the Annihilation Strike as predecessor and the blaze as shield, the future of the 9-layer penetrations would definitely not be simple. After Naz and Rentaro, the Ninefold Totoro was the third person to give Noah a feeling of unlimited possibilities in the future. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a staff member wearing a white coat appeared. Everyone, please follow me. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, and then lined up together. Under the guidance of the staff member wearing the white coat, they walked towards the site of the sublimation ceremony. 1. When the new Daybreak Star tattoo was injected into Noah's body, through a special needleless injection method, Noah only felt his body slightly warm up. Immediately, the pure white star tattoo appeared on his chest and bloomed with a warm flame. Compared to the first time the Daybreak Star tattoo was implanted, it made people feel as if their whole body was burning. But the sublimation ceremony only made people feel this much pain, and then nothing else. However, with his unique sensing ability, Noah, who knew his body like the back of his hand, could clearly feel it. His body had undergone a transformation that couldn't be seen from the outside. Chapter 225. Phew! In the corridor, Yu was pressing his chest and letting out a heavy sigh of relief, as if he had just completed a life-threatening operation. It could be seen that a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. It's great to be able to successfully ascend. That's right. Orange Bar also patted his chest. Our daily efforts didn't go to waste. That's great, yeah. Yes, You revealed a happy smile, clearly in a very good mood. If one's body and mind did not reach the standard of ascension, even if they went through the instrument of ascension, they would not be able to successfully ascend. It was precisely because he knew this that you was especially happy. Because, among the people who received the additional opportunity of the instrument of ascension this time, whether it was physical, mental, or strength, you was the weakest. But even so, you had successfully ascended and became a level 2 surpasser. How could you not be happy? And even you had successfully ascended to level 2, not to mention the others. None of them had a chance of failing. This way, everyone has reached the standard of being promoted to the 2nd grade. Julie tilted her little head, making a jingling sound. It's great that no one has to be expelled. In Haolang Academy, there were conditions for being promoted to the next grade. Within a year, when they had to be promoted to the next grade, the students had to successfully ascend, or they would be expelled. In other words, if a 1st grade student wanted to be promoted to the 2nd grade, they had to ascend to level 2. And if a 2nd grade student wanted to be promoted to the 3rd grade, they had to ascend to level 3. At the end of the 3rd grade, they could announce their graduation from Haolang Academy and enter the Dawn organization to work. And those present who had successfully ascended to level 2 were equivalent to obtaining a pass to the 2nd grade. In the following year, they would be able to continue studying without any academic burden. But did we really ascend to level 2? Ivanli touched his chest with some uncertainty. It doesn't feel real. Compared to the first time the Daybreak Star rune was implanted, the instrument of ascension was terrifyingly dull. Everyone also felt their bodies heat up after being injected with the new Daybreak Star pattern. Then, they were congratulated by the staff and announced that the upgrade was a success. If that was the case, who would be able to feel anything? Only the silent Noah, who was walking at the back of the group of girls, knew what kind of changes his body had undergone. Due to Noah using his limit ability to suppress all aspects of his strength to the level of Grade I, this time, Noah could clearly feel the degree of enhancement his body had obtained. That was when he was at rank I. It was a completely different level of enhancement. Using a sentence to describe it, if the level I enhancement is 10, then the level 2 enhancement is definitely not 20. At the very least it should be 30. In other words, just by raising one level, Noah and the others had obtained several times the enhancement of their level 1. After fully understanding the difference between level 1 and level 2, Noah finally understood what kind of miracle it was for him to be able to defeat the level V Moonlight Glass Rabbit. The higher the level, the greater the gap. That is to say, according to the current enhancement, the level V enhancement was definitely not just 50, it was at least 100. With such a terrifying degree of enhancement, coupled with the Moonlight Glass Rabbit's outstanding physical strength, battle experience and battle skills, as well as the release of the true strength of the Blaze, the Moonlight Glass Rabbit would be in an invincible position even if it faced 30 level 3. To be able to defeat such an opponent, without the exterminating strike and leap, Noah would definitely not be able to accomplish such a feat when he was still at level 1. Since the physical aspect had obtained such a degree of enhancement, then the mental aspect would naturally not be left behind. Just like the physical aspect, the mental aspect had obtained several times the enhancement of level 1. Even Noah's limit, which had entered into a state of self-growth, had also obtained a huge leap in his magical power. Apart from that, even the Blaze had undergone a transformation. For Noah, he could feel that the knight's sword and revolver in the depths of his soul had become even more solid. The sharpness of the knight's sword and the might of the revolver had also been enhanced. Whether it was the physical aspect, the mental aspect, the magical power or the soul, all the enhancements obtained from the upgraded Daybreak Star pattern were once again stripped away by Noah's special physique, becoming the true strength of Noah. It was impossible for them to disappear when the Daybreak Star pattern left his body. Overall, apart from not obtaining the Blaze and the limit ability, the instrument of sublimation this time had brought Noah far more benefits than the previous time. If this continued, the benefits that the Daybreak Star pattern would bring to Noah would absolutely reach an unimaginable level. As long as the strength of Noah's various abilities did not reach the limits of the daybreak star pattern. Suddenly, Noah felt a gaze penetrating through, directly landing on his body. It stared at him without letting go. Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the gaze. It was from the outside of the building, through the window, and onto Noah's body. Following his perception ability, Noah followed the gaze and looked out the window, looking at the opposite side. Then Noah saw it. On the top of the opposite building, a young girl stood outside the guardrail. She was not afraid of losing her footing and falling. She stood facing the wind. Her bright blonde hair swayed back and forth in the wind. It was exceptionally eye-catching. The young girl stood there, looking at Noah, as if she had also noticed that Noah had noticed her. For a moment she seemed to be surprised, but quickly changed her attitude. Undoubtedly, the distance between the building and the opposite building was at least 100 meters. Noah inexplicably understood. At this time, the corner of the young girl's mouth must have curved into a beautiful arc. However, no matter how beautiful that arc was, it could not change the meaning of the other party's mouth curved into an arc. It was as if she had found her prey, and would not let it escape. Immediately, the young girl's mouth seemed to slightly wriggle. With such a distance, even if Noah had now reached level 2, and his vision had been strengthened, there was still no way for him to clearly see the shape of the other party's mouth. However, Noah still understood what the other party's wriggling mouth was saying. "Found you." So simple. In the next moment, the blonde girl turned around, leaving behind a beautiful back view, and disappeared from Noah's sight. Noah looked at the top of the building that was already empty. His eyes slowly narrowed. Noah, Julie, who was walking in front, found that Noah not only did not follow, but also stood behind, looking out the window. She suddenly felt quite puzzled. "What's wrong with you?" Noah finally reacted. He retracted his gaze and looked at Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Nya, who had stopped in their tracks and were looking at him with puzzled gazes. He shook his head gently. "No, it's nothing." After saying that, Noah strode forward, caught up with the group of young girls, and left the scene together with the group of young girls. Noah did not notice. At the same time he left, at the entrance of the opposite building, a young girl with long blonde hair swaying in the wind walked out in an unforgettable and confident manner. She raised her head and looked in the direction of where Noah had just been. "Noah Dole. Is it?" As if she was reminiscing about the fate of meeting with him, the girl closed her eyes and said these words, as if she was intoxicated. "It's slightly different from what I imagined, but it's also more interesting than expected." With that said, the young girl raised her hand and made an aiming gesture. She aimed at the position where Noah had just been, closed one eye, and raised her hand like a gun. The meeting of the exception and the special. I'm really looking forward to it. Chapter 226. Hugh. On the road at night, Julie's eyes were closed as she lay on Noah's back. Her cute face was slightly flushed as she fell into a deep sleep. Yeah. Ivanli, who was walking next to Noah, shook his head with an unconcealable smile on his face. She actually fell asleep in the middle of the celebration. Should I say that this is really Julie's style? Or should I say that this child really is like a child who never grows up? This can't be helped. Orange Bar, who was walking on the other side of Noah, smiled understandingly. The weather here is too stuffy for Julie, who has always lived in a country with lower temperatures. Now that it's almost time to turn off the lights, it's not strange that she's so tired. Isn't it better to hold the celebration during the holidays? You said uneasily. If Julie knew that we were celebrating while she was asleep, would she be unhappy? Julie isn't such a petty person. Noah, who was carrying Julie and walking between Ivan and Orange Bar, smiled. Besides, since we're celebrating our promotion to level 2, it should be done on the day of the successful promotion. Otherwise, it won't be fun if we wait until the holidays. Noah is right. Ivan poked his head out from beside Noah and winked at Ya. Besides, Julie should feel regretful instead of angry that she fell asleep in the middle of the celebration. I was planning to scold her when she wakes up. Don't. You shook her head nervously. In that case, Jolie-chan will be too pitiful. Julie, who was lying on Noah's back, wrinkled her nose slightly as she heard the conversation between Ivan and Nya. Her arms around Noah's neck tightened as she murmured in her sleep. Daddy. Everyone was stunned when they heard Julie's murmur. Then they chuckled tacitly. Julie called you daddy. Ivan nudged Noah with his elbow and teased him. Noah, how do you feel about having such a lovely daughter like Julie? Noah glanced at Ivan and sighed. It's okay. I'm already used to taking care of children. Upon hearing this, Ivanli, Tachibana, and Nya burst into laughter again. Their bell-like laughter echoed in the night sky, making the atmosphere exceptionally relaxed. Unfortunately, the group of people who were laughing and chatting with each other did not notice. Presently a look of serenity came over Julie's face, and another murmur. Noah. After a while the group arrived at the entrance of the dormitory. Okay Noah. Ivan turned around and put his hand on Julie's shoulder. Give me Julie. Can you do it? Noah asked hesitantly. How about I send Julie directly back to your room? Are you an idiot? Ivan rolled his eyes at Noah. I'm rank 2 now. How can I not even carry such a light Julie? That's true. Noah shrugged. Don't worry. Tachibana and Nya also came over. We'll help. Noah nodded. Then I'll leave it to you. With that said, Ivan, Tachibana, and Nya worked together. Julie's hand, which was tightly wrapped around Noah's neck, was finally released and moved to Tachibana's back. Then we'll go up first. You should go back to your room as well. Good night, Noah. After leaving these words, Ivan, Tachibana, and Nya walked into the dormitory under Noah's gaze and moved toward Ivan and Julie's room. However, even after the group of girls disappeared from his sight, Noah still stood in the same spot and did not leave. Whoosh! In the dead of night, a cold wind blew from the sky and swept past Noah, who was standing in front of the dormitory door. Whoosh! At this moment, a black shadow suddenly rushed into the sky from the side of the forest. The tip of its foot lightly tapped on a tree branch and gracefully swept into the dark and windy night sky, leaping into the distance. Regarding this, Noah's face did not show the slightest bit of surprise. Obviously, he already knew that the other party was lying in ambush nearby. His eyes became fierce, and with a twist of his foot, his body shot out like lightning and swept onto the top of a tree, stepping on the canopy that looked like it could fall at any time. Noah's gaze swept across the night sky and finally landed on the top of a building. There, a figure clearly reflected in Noah's dark and deep eyes. At this moment, Noah narrowed his eyes and tapped on the canopy. His body turned into a shadow and flew out. After a short moment, he steadily landed on the top of the building where the black shadow was. He slowly raised his head and looked in front. In the next moment, the bright golden hair swaying under the gentle moonlight was imprinted in Noah's eyes. The one in the day was also you, right? Noah suddenly opened his mouth. Purposely luring me out. It's time to tell me your motive, right? It was not known if the other party listened to Noah's words, but after a while, the other party turned around. The golden hair behind her back swayed in a beautiful arc in the air as she faced Noah. At this moment, behind the other party, a full moon turned into the background, releasing gentle moonlight and enveloping the other party's body. Under the moonlight, Noah's vision was also somewhat affected, and there was no way for him to see the other party's full appearance. But in the next moment, the other party's red lips opened slightly, and with a clear voice, she spat out a word, which Noah heard clearly. Blazing Fong. As soon as he finished speaking, a beautiful star pattern spun and spread out from the opponent's chest. It exploded into a blazing flame and turned into a weapon, falling into the opponent's hand. Looking at the weapon in his opponent's hand, Noah's pupils couldn't help but shrink. It was a long and slender spear, with rippling blue patterns on the body of the spear. However, it was definitely not a cold weapon, but a real hot weapon, a rifle. His opponent actually possessed a surpasser like Noah's blaze. A surpasser with a complex structure that shouldn't have appeared. Hee hee. The girl with the rifle let out a joyful laugh. She raised the rifle in her hand and aimed it at Noah. Bang! In the midst of the muffled gunshot sound, the girl didn't hesitate to pull the trigger of the rifle in her hand. The bullet immediately turned into a streak of black lightning, piercing through the darkness and exploding out. However, almost at the same time, a blazing flame burst out from Noah's body and turned into a revolver. Bang! Compared to the rifle, a much louder gunshot sound reverberated. Another streak of black lightning also burst out, sweeping forward and colliding head-on with the incoming bullet of the rifle. Clang! In the midst of the collision, the bullet of the rifle was directly knocked away by the bullet of the revolver. Immediately, the remaining bullet of the revolver flew in the direction of the girl without slowing down. Xiao! The pitch-black bullet streaked across the girl's cheek and disappeared into the darkness. Whether it was Noah or the girl, they didn't care where the bullet from their blaze went or whether it hit the other party. They only stared at each other with a different expression in their eyes. Noah's eyes were filled with surprise and surprise. The girl's eyes were filled with a bright and excited light. He saw that the girl was staring at the revolver in Noah's hand and chuckled as if she was intoxicated. Sure enough, we are the same kind. Noah pondered for a moment and coldly said, "Who are you? You will know soon." The girl smiled cheerfully, turned around, and had her back facing Noah. "I look forward to our meeting again, the same kind in my destiny." Leaving these words, the girl jumped, as if she wanted to fly towards the round moon. With a perfect parabola, she cut through the night sky and finally disappeared into the endless darkness below. Noah didn't have any thoughts of chasing after her and silently watched her leave. He raised the revolver in his hand, moved his gaze and looked up. In the dark night, the pure white lines on the body of the gun rippled like water waves. Noah canceled the materialization of the blaze and murmured, "Same kind." Chapter 227. The next day, in the first-grade classroom, Julie sat in her seat, motionlessly looking in front of her. Her face was as emotionless as usual, but there was a gloomy atmosphere surrounding her, making it very clear that she was not in a good mood. "Are you still upset about last night's celebration?" Ivan, who was sitting next to Julie, sighed. "Didn't I tell you? It wasn't your fault that you fell asleep halfway?" "Yeah." Julie's tone was still a bit gloomy, but it's rare to celebrate with everyone. "What do you think we are celebrating for?" Ivan pointed at Julie's head with his finger and said reproachfully, "Since we were able to celebrate this time for reaching level 2, then next time we can celebrate for reaching level 3. Celebrating is something that can be done at any time, so don't mind it anymore." Hearing this, the gloomy atmosphere surrounding Julie was slightly relieved, making Ivan show a helpless expression. She really is like a child. Because of a small matter she was gloomy. Because of a few words of advice, her mood improved. In addition to her appearance and slightly natural personality, she kept saying daddy, mommy, and so on. From this point of view, perhaps Julie was really no different from a child. Sitting behind Ivan and Julie, Noah quietly listened to the conversation between his two friends, but his mind had already drifted away. Under the moonlight, the girl pointed the rifle at him. Although he did not know the other's true identity, the rifle she used, no matter from its appearance or aura, was without a doubt the blaze. In fact, before the girl took out the rifle, she did shout the words blaze. Therefore, the blaze that should not have appeared, but was the same type as Noah, was indeed materialized by a girl. Needless to say, to be able to use the blaze, the other must be a surpasser. Then was the other party also a student of this school? But if that was the case, then it would be the same as Noah. A student who had such a special blaze would definitely receive the attention of all the teachers and students in the school. It was impossible that no one had heard of it before. In that case, the identity of the other party was a mystery. However, the other party seemed to be quite persistent about Noah. The reason should be the so-called kindred spirits, right? Who was the other party? With this question in mind, Noah fell into deep thought. At this moment, at the door of the classroom, the substitute teacher, Sangua, pushed open the door and walked in from outside to the podium. However, as soon as he appeared in the classroom, the three kingdoms made such an unexpected statement. Although this is something that rarely happens in our school, I still want to tell everyone that today, our class will welcome a transfer student. A transfer student? As expected, all the students in the class were stunned. A surpasser could only be found in 1,000 people, and it was someone who only had the adaptability of the daybreak star pattern, and might not be able to successfully implant the daybreak star pattern. Therefore, it was just as the three kingdoms had said, a student who turned into a surpasser, halfway through their journey, was a very rare occurrence. However, the person who walked in from outside the classroom not only made the stunned students come back to their senses, but they also all sucked in a breath of air. No matter if it was a boy or a girl, their eyes were all filled with amazement. The person who entered the classroom was like Julie, a foreign beauty who was obviously not a local. However, unlike Julie, the other party's appearance could not be described as cute. This was because the girl not only had a breathtaking and seductive figure, but the aura around her was also not as quiet and beautiful as Julie's. Instead, it was as if the spotlight was purposely focused on her body. Every part of her body exuded a strong sense of existence like a star. Both were foreign beauties. If Julie was the moon floating in the night sky, releasing soft silver frost, then this girl was the sun blooming with scorching light in the sky. Julie would unconsciously attract the attention of the surrounding people. On the other hand, this girl seemed to be attacking at any time and any place. Every move she made was attracting the attention of the surrounding people. What was even more amazing was that she also had a pair of ocean-like jade eyes. Furthermore, she had extremely bright golden hair that reached her waist. Sitting in the last row, Noah slowly straightened his back and looked at the girl. His eyebrows gradually raised. Under everyone's gaze, the girl walked into the classroom and came to the podium. She shook her bright-colored hair, and at the same time, cast her gaze on Noah, who was sitting in the last row. Her face gradually revealed an extremely proud and confident smile. That smile was exactly the same as the one she left behind before disappearing in front of Noah last night. Yes, this so-called transfer student in front of him was the mysterious girl who had the blaze rifle, Lilith Bristow. After saying such a name, the girl named Lilith put one hand on her waist and smiled sweetly. I transferred from a sister school in the United Kingdom. Although it's a bit rushed, I'll specially allow you to directly call my name. Whether it was the content or the tone, Lilith's words were full of arrogance. However, this kind of arrogance strangely didn't arouse the disgust of many people. Instead, it made people feel that it was natural. Therefore, Ivan, who was sitting in front of Noah, couldn't help but speak. What an incredible person! Hee. Lilith closed her eyes and smiled nonchalantly. I'll take it as a compliment. Saying so, the corner of Lilith's mouth curled up. With leisurely steps, she walked down from the podium. From the beginning to the end, Lilith's eyes were fixed on Noah. Then, under the stunned expression of the surrounding people, Lilith directly passed through every empty seat in the classroom and sat down in the last row, just next to Noah. Ivan, Julie, Tachaba, and other people who were familiar with Noah looked at each other. Even Noah frowned. Although he had long expected this girl named Lilith to come for him, Noah didn't expect that the other party didn't have the slightest intention of avoiding him and directly approached him. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was what Lilith said later. Teacher, Three Kingdoms. Lilith's voice echoed. Can we continue? If you don't have any questions. Three Kingdoms pushed his glasses and made such a statement. Noah, from today onwards, you and Lilith will form the tripping double blade, ha. The students were stunned at first, then they immediately exclaimed in surprise. Tripping? Tripping double blade? Ivan was a little overwhelmed. In other words, from today onwards, Noah will always live with Lilith? The ahog on Julie's head suddenly stood up, and even Tachaba and Anya slightly opened their mouths. Teacher, Noah's frown became tighter and tighter. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Student Noah, it's because you don't have a partner who can form a tripping double blade that you've always been alone. However, the school's basic education policy is for two people to form a group. Three Kingdoms indifferently said. There was no way in the past, but now there is finally one more student in the class. The rules also say that the school will arrange for those who don't officially form the tripping double blade, in the end to form the tripping double blade. This is the rule, you didn't forget it, right? As he said this, Three Kingdoms looked at Lilith. Moreover, as a special student, Lilith also didn't object to this decision. Special? What is that? All the students were at a loss. Noah turned his gaze to Lilith, but found that she was also looking at him. This is fate. As if Lilith had caught her prey, her eyes bloomed with a strange look, and her smile was still confident. Let's get along well. As an exception and a special. Chapter 228. In the corridor of the dormitory, Noah, who was walking towards his own room, heaved a deep sigh under the piercing gaze of the people who had been staring at him from the stairs. Even if Noah didn't look back, he could guess that Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Ya, who came back with him, didn't return to their rooms immediately. Instead, they stayed at the stairs. Most likely, they won't leave before he enters his room. The reason is very simple. It's just that these girls seem to care more about Lilith, who is about to move in with him, than Noah himself. However, what can Noah do? The rule of the academy was that the students had to form the official tripping twin blades. If they couldn't form the tripping twin blades in the end, the academy would arrange for the rest of the students to form the tripping twin blades. Among the freshmen, because Noah was the only one left, he couldn't find a partner to form a tripping double blade. So he had no choice but to delay. Now, as soon as Lilith moved into the class, Noah, who has been single, naturally has to be with Lilith, who also doesn't have a tripping double blade. As for the difference between men and women, if the academy can really consider this, Noah will be very happy. Unfortunately, it didn't. Having said that, since the establishment of the academy, there was no example of men and women forming a tripping double blade until Noah came to this academy. That is to say, from the beginning of temporarily forming a tripping double blade, with Ivanli and Julie, to now forming a formal tripping double blade, with Lilith. As a person living with the opposite sex, Noah is the first person in the history of this academy to eat crabs. I don't know if it's lucky or unfortunate. Enduring the sharp gazes that continued to attack him from behind, Noah sighed once again. He walked to the door of his room and extended his hand to push open the door. Until then, the gaze from behind disappeared. Vaguely, the footsteps of Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Ya also sounded, which made Noah finally relax his expression a little. However, this relaxation couldn't last long. In the next second, when Noah walked into his room and closed the door, the scene that appeared in front of him instantly made Noah speechless. "Oh, you're back." The one who said this sentence was the tripping double blade, who should move into this room today and live with Noah. At this time, the girl named Lilith was sitting at a pure white round table. There was a tea set on the table with tea and snacks. Lilith held the cup in her hand and leisurely sipped on it. If Noah remembered correctly, although there was a small round table in his room, it was not only a small wooden table, but it was also so short that one could only sit on the floor. It was not like the table in front of Lilith, that was as tall as an ordinary table. It looked very high-end and had chairs beside it. If that was the only change, it would be fine. However, the room in front of Noah was completely different from the room he saw before he went out in the morning. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was changed beyond recognition. The layout was still the same. However, the curtains, wardrobes, TV, bookshelves, and so on were all replaced with high-end items that could only be found in a luxury suite. Even the standard bunk bed was replaced with a large double bed, with a sofa next to it. Everywhere was filled with the noble taste of a lady's room. Such a room, I believe that anyone who saw it would think that it was a luxury suite in a hotel, not a room in a school dormitory. And naturally Lilith, who was sitting at a small white table in the middle of such a room, was a real missy. After all, beside Lilith, there was a girl wearing a butler's tuxedo, waiting for orders behind. Is that the butler? But the butler should generally be a man, right? Is he here to serve Lilith? Then he should be wearing a maid's uniform, right? Also, what's with this feeling of breaking into a rich person's house? Everything had too many factors that needed to be complained about. So with so many factors combined together, Noah didn't know what to say for a while. What's wrong? On the contrary, Lilith was puzzled by Noah's behavior. She tilted her head and looked around. Sure enough, even if the room is changed, the taste is still too low? It has nothing to do with taste. Noah didn't hide his boredom. After all, we are here at school. If you want to enjoy it, you might as well go home and enjoy it. Listening to Noah's sarcastic words, the butler girl standing behind Lilith immediately tightened her face and took a step forward. But when she was about to say something, Lilith stopped her. Noah is my roommate. He has the right to comment on this room, Sarah. Lilith said such words, but she didn't have a humble attitude at all. She was still so confident. Although I say so, this is also my interest. As a roommate, you should accommodate me specially. Is it specially again? Noah closed his eyes slightly as if he had given up. He stopped talking and walked into the room. He took off his uniform jacket, opened the wardrobe that had been replaced, and hung his clothes in it. It was worth mentioning that although the wardrobe was replaced, all the clothes that Noah originally put in the wardrobe were still there, and they were now hanging in the same position as they were in the morning. Sarah, after Noah hung the clothes in the wardrobe, Lilith said to herself, "Help my roommate make a cup of milk tea." Got it, Mississippi. The butler girl named Sarah bowed slightly, but at the moment when she bent down, she glared fiercely at Noah. Then, she made a cup of milk tea and placed it opposite Lilith. From beginning to end, Lilith didn't ask Noah if he wanted to drink tea. It was as if since she asked someone to make tea, then Noah must drink it. Not only did she do things her own way, but she was also very willful. If it were normal times, Noah might have ignored this young lady, who did things her own way. Now, Noah still had something to ask Lilith, so he didn't mind accompanying her. At the moment, Noah sat directly opposite Lilith, glanced at Sarah, who was standing behind Lilith and still staring at him, as if she had a blood feud with him. He supported his chin with his hand, and said with disinterest, "If you are really a young lady, I find it hard to believe that you would choose to live under the same roof with a person of the opposite sex, who you have only met a few times and barely talked to." Lilith's action of drinking tea paused slightly, and her green eyes looked straight at Noah. "Are you implying that I am too casual? Please interpret it as I see that you have another purpose." Noah also met Lilith's gaze, and his expression became quite meaningful. "Am I wrong? You call yourself a special young lady? It's not that I call myself that, I am special." Lilith smiled at Noah unhurriedly. "And you are also very special, aren't you? The exceptional student Noah? Let's stop beating around the bush, shall we?" Noah slowly put away his smile. "You should also tell me why you are targeting me, right?" Yesterday, Lilith had already secretly observed Noah once, and she also tested Noah once last night. Noah didn't care what Lilith meant by special, but the other party was obviously targeting him. Even the matter of forming a tripping double edge with Noah seemed to be secretly manipulated by her. Lilith was not targeting Noah. Who would believe that? As a man, you're too paranoid. Lilith was still leisurely drinking tea in response to Noah's inquiry, but she also cast a glance at Noah from the corner of her eyes. "However, if you must ask me if I have any purpose, my purpose is very simple. It is to form a tripping double edge with you, the exceptional." Noah suddenly made a puzzled sound. "Don't make me say it a second time." Lilith put down the teacup in her hand and raised her eyes slightly with strong confidence. "I came to form a tripping double edge with you." Chapter 229. Seeing the strong confidence in Lilith's green eyes, Noah understood. With the self-esteem of the girl named Lilith in front of him, she wouldn't beat around the bush, or even be secretive about this kind of thing. That is to say, just like what Lilith herself said, she only had one purpose: to become a double-edged sword with Noah. Why? This question almost came out of Noah's mouth in the form of blurting out, "Why do you want to spend so much effort just to form a double-edged sword with me? Why?" Lilith, who heard Noah's question, was a little surprised. "Do you still need to ask this kind of thing? Of course, it's because we are the same kind, isn't it?" Hearing this, Noah was silent for a while and stared straight at Lilith's eyes. "Is it just because of this?" Don't you understand? Lilith was unusually calm, but there was a touch of excitement in her tone. The excitement of always thinking that only you are special, that only you are the only one, that only you have the unique blaze. But in the end, there is the same kind around you. Can't you understand? In other words, because you found out that you are not the only abnormal existence in this world, and you are not alone, but have the same kind, this feeling of almost getting rid of the loneliness. You feel happy? And this so-called abnormal existence should be referring to the fact that Lilith possessed a soul that theoretically should not have the blaze of the rifle. Our souls are all guns. There is no better evidence than this to prove that we are the same kind. Lilith smiled sweetly. That smile no longer had the confidence until just now, but it was particularly gentle. So the exception you and the special me are meeting in combination is fate. When saying this sentence, Lilith's voice was full of joy. Obviously, to be able to meet someone who has the same type of blaze as her, Lilith really felt happy from the bottom of her heart. But if the one who possesses the unique blaze is the same kind, then the 9-layer penetrations should be the same, right? Compared to Lilith's fervent voice, Noah's voice was surprisingly calm. Can't he be your double-edged sword? You're talking about that supernatural ability, right? As expected, Lilith knew about the 9-layer penetrations. She supported her cheek with one hand and looked straight at Noah. Of course I'm happy about the fact that I have a kindred spirit, but there can only be one double-tripping blade. Therefore, compared to the shield of the 9 layers penetrating current, I prefer you who is a spear like me. After saying that, Lilith concluded with this sentence. After all, we have almost the same soul. The spacious room was suddenly filled with an indescribable silence. Noah was silent. He picked up the teacup filled with milk tea on the table and drank it. When the milk tea in the teacup was almost empty, Noah suddenly opened his mouth. The specific form of the blaze is different from person to person, right? Lilith was slightly surprised. Is there a problem? I just want to say that Ivan's blaze is a katana, probably because he has always been learning kendo, so he is most familiar with swords and sabers. The 9-layer penetrations blaze is a shield, probably because he has a strong desire to protect something deep in his heart. Noah directly turned his gaze to Lilith. Then Lilith, why would your blaze be a rifle? Is this what you want to ask? Lilith's pretty face relaxed little by little, as if she was immersed in some memories. After a while she chuckled. I have liked hunting since I was a child. Hunting? Noah's face was full of surprise. Do you mean hunting? That's right, Lilith said as she gestured with her gun and made a shooting motion. For the structure of the gun used for hunting, I used to break it down and reorganize it again and again. I kept repeating this action until I completely mastered it. Now even with my eyes closed, I can assemble a rifle. For me, the gun is a weapon that is more intimate than anything else, and it is also more familiar than anything else. Lilith spread her hands to Noah. Perhaps it is because of this that my blaze was able to materialize into a rifle, making me a unique existence? Now Noah also understood. The Dawn Star pattern implanted in the body of the Surpasser contained information about all weapons from ancient times to the present. Among them, it naturally included hot weapons, and even other weapons that could be used as weapons. The reason why the blaze of the Surpasser couldn't materialize into those hot weapons in the Dawn Star pattern was because their soul couldn't choose those weapons with complex structures. However, as mentioned earlier, a strong desire, a deep impression of experience, and other factors that could affect a person's mind, spirit, and even soul would cause the soul of the Surpasser to choose the most suitable weapon from the weapon database of the Daybreak Star Tattoo to materialize. Although this was not an easy thing to do, if what Lilith said was true, and she was already familiar with guns to this extent, it was not impossible for her soul to choose the rifle under the influence of a strong desire, a deep impression of her experience, and other factors. It was not impossible that Lilith's soul would choose the rifle. After understanding this, Noah laughed, and his laugh was quite sarcastic. However, it was not directed at Lilith, but at Noah himself. No, Lilith, Noah said indifferently. We are not the same kind. What are you talking about? Lilith was stunned and then frowned. What do you mean we are not the same kind? Undoubtedly our souls are all guns, right? That's why I said we are not the same kind. Noah closed his eyes. Even if our souls are in the form of guns, the color of our souls is not the same at all. Even if your soul turns into a gun, it is because you want to use the most familiar and most intimate gun to aim at animals, to aim at prey. Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his voice was like a heavy hammer, hitting the deepest part of Lilith's heart. But I am different. Different? Lilith looked at Noah in a daze, and a blank expression appeared on her face. Then she froze. What's different? What's different? Noah said in a self-deprecating tone. The difference is that your gun's muzzle used to only aim at animals and take away their lives. But my gun's muzzle used to only aim at people and take away their lives. Lilith's beautiful face froze. Not to mention Lilith, even Sarah, who had been silent at the side, suddenly had her pupils shrink, and her face was shaken. People? Take away people's lives? Is this true? Do you understand? Noah stood up, looked at Lilith condescendingly, and said word by word. Your soul is still pure white. But my soul has long been stained with bright red. Even if they are both guns, the weight of the two guns is not the same. So Lilith. Noah turned around, as if deliberately not letting Lilith see his current expression. Please forgive me for not being able to agree with your so-called the same kind. Leaving this sentence, Noah did not say anything else, and walked towards the direction of the bed. I am tired, I will rest for a while. Lilith could only silently look at Noah lying on the bed, and for a long time, she did not return to her senses. Chapter 230. The conversation with Lilith made it easier for Noah to fall into a deep sleep today than usual. Of course, it was not because of the so-called theory of different colors of souls that covered Noah's heart with a layer of haze. Although Noah did kill someone once, Noah had never regretted what he did that time, nor did he have any psychological burden because of it. After all, those people really did deserve to die. However, Noah's thoughts were also true. He did not want Lilith to classify him as the same kind as himself. Although the young lady was a bit willful and overconfident, the happiness and joy she showed when she found out that she had the same unique blaze as herself was from the bottom of her heart. Under such circumstances, if Lilith knew that the reason why Noah's blaze was the same gun as her was not because of the same soul, but because the weapon that originally existed was spiritualized and merged into one's own soul before being born, how disappointed would she be? Therefore, from the beginning, Noah and Lilith were not the same kind. In that case, if Noah let Lilith treat him as the same kind as her and continued to feel happy, wouldn't it be equivalent to deceiving this young lady, who really wanted to find a kind from the bottom of her heart? Under the influence of such thoughts, Noah also rejected Lilith's idea of kind. Of course, this was equivalent to pouring cold water on Lilith, but at least it was better than deceiving Lilith. Besides, Lilith also had a real kind. 9-layer penetrations. The 9-layer penetrations that had the same form as Lilith's blaze, that should not have appeared was Lilith's kind in the true sense. In this way, even if he poured cold water on Lilith, in the case that there was still a kind, she would not be too disappointed, right? However, the matter of Noah pouring cold water on Lilith was also a fact. The reason why he fell asleep so quickly was not so much because he felt pressured, but because Noah wanted to give Lilith some space. Therefore, Lilith and Sarah in the room did not make a sound, and Noah himself urged himself to sleep. So Noah quickly fell into a deep sleep. In a daze, at a certain moment, Noah heard a murmur in his ear. What do you mean not kind? Don't you even sleep like an ordinary person? The murmur was like a layer of mist, slowly shrouding Noah's ears. No matter what, since I have decided to let you be my tripping blade, I will not make a second decision. This is also fate. As soon as this sentence fell, a rather hot temperature approached Noah. Okay, I'm going to sleep too. Immediately, the rustling noises began to reverberate, and the temperature near Noah stabilized. It seemed that the distance between them was no longer closing. However, even in his sleep, Noah could still feel the temperature. and he slept more soundly. The night passed quietly. In a half-asleep state, when his consciousness was still quite hazy, Noah suddenly felt an abnormal fullness and softness wrapping around him. Not only did it hug his neck tightly, but it also pressed its whole body on Noah's body. That feeling, to be honest, if he hugged it like this, it would be more comfortable than hugging a pillow, right? However, Noah slowly furrowed his brows in his sleep, just because Noah felt that his face seemed to be buried, and it made him feel suffocated. Even if there was no hostility, malice, or killing intent around him, Noah's vigilance was not as high as before, and could be regarded as an ordinary person. But if he couldn't breathe, no matter who it was, he wouldn't be able to sleep, unless he wanted to never wake up. Unfortunately, Noah was still able to wake up. So, under the urging of the suffocating feeling, Noah gradually opened his eyes. However, in the next second, the thing that entered Noah's vision made Noah's consciousness completely awake in an instant, and even crashed. What entered Noah's vision was white. Unusually white. White like a pearl. It was a color that only appeared on extremely elastic and perfectly maintained skin. In other words, the white that entered Noah's vision was all the color of skin. And the owner of this white skin directly hugged Noah tightly in her arms, so that Noah's face was tightly buried in the other party's arms, and he couldn't even breathe. Noah's eyes opened to the maximum in an instant, and he understood his current state. To sum it up in a simple and clear sentence, a girl hugged Noah tightly. Moreover, she was naked, like holding a baby, hugging Noah's head into her arms, and her smooth and tender body was all squeezed on Noah's body. Noah's first reaction, who understood the situation, was to take a breath of cold air. This breath seemed to have awakened the other party. Woo! A lazy voice came into Noah's ears. So itchy. This voice, like a bomb, was detonated in Noah's head. Noah, who was in a mess due to the explosion, bounced up with a miraculous speed that could surpass the leaped out, and instantly left the enviable white skin. Then Noah saw it. He saw Lilith, who kicked away the thin sheet and was naked. Ha! Lilith seemed to be aware of the movement around her. She opened her half-closed eyes and subconsciously propped up her upper body. Suddenly, a very overwhelming and impactful posture was deeply imprinted in Noah's mind. In such a situation, Lilith, who was in a daze, spoke. Sarah, is it dawn? No, I'm not your strange butler. Noah's voice trembled. Why are you in this state? What do you mean why? Lilith was still in a daze as she yawned cutely. I don't understand what you're talking about. It's just clothes. Clothes? Lilith seemed to be a little sober and said lazily. You know I can't sleep if I wear clothes, Sarah. I told you that I'm not that weird butler of yours. Noah finally regained his normal train of thought, and quickly turned his head away. Anyway, you should put on your clothes first. Yes, Lilith responded in a daze, and immediately lowered her head. She lay down again and fell asleep. Lilith. After not getting a response for a long time, Noah could only glance in Lilith's direction. When he found that Lilith had fallen asleep again, he was suddenly speechless. If he took a closer look, although the sky was now bright, it was not to the extent of being completely bright. Even the students in the other dormitories should still be sleeping, right? Noah sighed secretly, and tried not to look at Lilith. He picked up the quilt that Lilith kicked off, and covered Lilith's body. Undoubtedly, you look so mature, but now you look like a child who needs to be taken care of. What's going on? With a wry smile on his face, Noah got up and got out of bed. After a simple wash, he took out his uniform from the closet, put on his clothes, and walked out of the room quietly. Kacha! When the door was gently closed, Lilith, who was lying on the bed, opened one of her eyes and looked in the direction of the door, showing an expression of a successful prank. Sure enough, it's better to let you become my tripping blade. Needless to say, Lilith was completely pretending to be asleep just now. However, I didn't expect him to see me naked on the first day. I even covered myself with a quilt last night. Lilith pulled the quilt hard to cover her head, and a muffled voice came from it. Forget it. Just treat it as a special benefit for you. After saying that, not long after, The rhythmic sound of breathing could be heard once again from under the sheets. Chapter 231. The school was exceptionally quiet in the early morning. Perhaps it was because Noah came out too early, but now, except for some students who were more diligent in the morning and came out for morning jogging or early practice, there was almost no one walking on the road. A weak wind blew from afar, causing the trees on both sides of the road to sway and make rustling sounds. Pink cherry blossoms danced in the wind, drawing beautiful arcs and falling to the ground. Such a scene was exceptionally pleasing to the eye. Because it was a bit early to go to the cafeteria, Noah randomly chose a road and took a walk in the school. Speaking of which, ever since he came to this school, Noah had not strolled in the school as seriously as he did today. If one did not look at the nature of Haoleang School, this school was far superior to other schools in terms of both scale and level. From the map of Haoleang School that Noah saw in the student handbook, this school not only had playgrounds, training grounds, and even gyms for people to exercise, but also several squares, parks, flower beds, and pavilions. For a school, such a scale was already very impressive. At least, Noah could guarantee that in this country, there should be no other school that could compare with Haoleang School. It was believed that many people would choose to stroll around the school during their free time and enjoy the scenery of this luxurious school. When Noah came to the school on the first day, he was also amazed by the scenery here. But because of various things that happened later, Noah had not had a chance to seriously walk around the school. Today, because of Lilith, Noah got a chance. After removing the matter of Lilith from his mind, Noah leisurely strolled in the school with a pace that was relatively slow compared to the past. Around him, every once in a while, one or two students wearing gymnastic clothes and running in the school would occasionally pass by Noah. Some did not notice Noah, while some seemed to recognize Noah and ran past Noah while muttering something. From time to time, Noah would hear the word exception in the midst of these mutterings. From a certain point of view, this batch of first-year students was really easy to attract attention. Blaze, who owned a revolver, was known as the exception Noah. The Blaze that possessed the shield was also known as the 9 layers penetration of the ability. Julie had a doll-like appearance, but her strength was completely inversely proportional to her appearance. There was also the heir to the famous Tangerine 18 Arts, Tangerine Ba, who came from a martial arts family. Even Ivanli had become quite famous because of his outstanding appearance and outstanding swordsmanship. Ivanya was said to be very popular among the boys. Of course, the reason why the latter was so popular with boys was not only because of her delicate appearance that made people want to protect her, but also because of her proud chest that couldn't be ignored. And everyone's popularity had been raised recently, becoming one of the few level 2 surpassers among the freshmen, and there was a tendency for it to rise even higher. In addition, Lilith, who had recently transferred over from her sister school in the UK, had the title of Special, and seemed to have an extremely noble background. Her appearance didn't lose out to Julie's at all, and her figure even exceeded Julie's by more than a notch. This batch of freshmen indeed often became the center of conversation for others. Because of this, Noah could not help but mutter, "Isn't this a bit too eye-catching? If you're talking about yourself, then there's nothing I can do about it." Who knew that as soon as Noah's words fell, a voice responded immediately. "After all, now everyone knows that you and the super beautiful girl from England have formed an official tripping double blade, and even lived together." Noah's footsteps stopped, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, then he helplessly turned around and looked behind him. Ivan, in a gymnastic suit, seemed to have just gone through some intense exercise, and his body was sweating all over, standing behind Noah. His hands were crossed in front of his chest, highlighting a pair of perfectly round breasts. His eyes were half squinted on his pretty face, and he looked angry. "What's wrong? Noah, why isn't your cohabiting beautiful transfer student by your side?" When he said this, although Ivan's tone sounded like he was making fun of Noah, a careful person would be able to hear a hint of bitterness. If it was normal, Noah might be able to hear the real meaning hidden in Ivan's words. But he didn't know if it was because of Lilith's stimulation in the morning. The moment he saw Ivan, Noah couldn't help but move his gaze down and cast it on Ivan's chest. It had to be said that even if Ivan was not as good as Ya, he was not inferior to Lilith. Noah had accidentally seen Ivan's naked body before. Inadvertently, Noah compared it with Lilith's naked body he saw in the morning, and he was surprised to find that in terms of shape, Ivan seemed to be more beautiful. Ivan, who didn't know that his body was compared to other girls by the only person of the opposite sex so far, looked at Noah's somewhat complicated and dull expression, and he was a little angry. "Noah, did you hear me talking to you?" "Huh." Noah woke up and realized what he had just imagined. He couldn't help but scold himself in his heart, and immediately smiled embarrassedly. Ma, good morning. Good morning. What the hell?" Ivan stretched out his finger and poked Noah's forehead. He leaned forward, put his face in front of Noah, put his hands on his waist, and stared at Noah angrily. The Noah I know is not a guy who stares at other people's faces in a daze. "Tell me, who are you, and why are you pretending to be Noah? What are you talking about?" Noah smiled bitterly. "Besides, I'm not staring at your face in a daze, I'm looking at your chest." Ivan suddenly froze. "Chest." Noah fiercely swallowed back the word that almost jumped out of his mouth, and his face turned red, and he hurriedly changed the topic. Right, Ivan, why are you so early today?" "I just came out to do morning exercises as usual. You know that I have a habit of doing morning exercises." Ivan was a little hesitant. "And I can't sleep very well." "You can't sleep?" Noah asked in confusion. "What's wrong? Why can't you sleep?" "No." What? Ivan inexplicably said this sentence out of anger, stretched out his hand, and poked Noah's forehead again. "You should go back and care about your cohabitant." After saying that, Ivan coldly snorted, turned around, and ran in another direction. "What's going on?" Noah touched his forehead, and could only helplessly chase after him. "What did I do to make you angry?" "I said it's nothing," Ivan said, but his angry tone was not convincing at all. "Shio." Just as Noah was about to say something, the sound of something tearing through the air rang out, causing Noah's expression to freeze. In the next moment, his entire body tensed up. Without the slightest hesitation, Noah suddenly turned around, raised his hand, clenched it into a fist, and fiercely smashed it behind him. Pung! In the next moment, a muffled sound came from behind Noah, and a violent ripple of energy spread out from the front of Noah's fist, swinging in all directions. Taking a closer look, in front of the fist that Noah had swung out, there was another slender and fair fist on top of it. Then, from the slender and white fist, a force was transmitted that shook Noah's body back, and after a few steps he stabilized. This made Noah raise his head, and looked forward with an ugly face. There, a girl with long black hair was swinging her palm that just hit Noah's fist, and her face was full of arrogance, revealing a fierce smile. The girl was wearing a maid costume, and a pair of rabbit ears on her head. Ivan, who was aware of the movement behind him, quickly turned around, and when he saw the girl who attacked Noah, his face changed. "Teacher Little Rabbit." Impressively, it was Moonsight Glass Rabbit. Chapter 232. Why? The sudden appearance of the Moonlight Glass Rabbit seemed to have a huge impact on Ivan, causing him to be unable to react for a moment. On the other hand, Noah didn't have the slightest doubt about Tsukuyumi's sudden appearance. He just slowly raised his face and looked straight ahead with his slightly cold eyes. Not a bad gaze, exception. Receiving Noah's cold gaze, Tsukuyumi didn't get angry at all. It was as if the matter of her being seriously injured by Noah didn't happen at all. She even licked the corner of her mouth excitedly. "You're making me restless. I want to fight you again." "Want to fight?" Noah glanced at Ivan, who was still in a daze, and took a step forward to shield Ivan behind him. Then he sneered at Moonlit Glass Bunny. "You shouldn't have said that after you finished fighting, right? Tsukuyumi-sensei, if I really want to fight, I will directly use Blaze." Tsukuyumi spread out her hands. The smile on her face was still a bit ruthless and fierce. "I just heard that you've risen to grade 2. So I came to greet you." I'm happy from the bottom of my heart that you've become stronger, classmate Noah. While saying such a sentence, Tsukuyumi's face showed a very happy expression, proving that what she said was true. Although I really want to fight with you again, but unfortunately, if I fight with you here again, I will lose the job that I picked up. The job that you picked up? Ivan finally reacted. He stepped out from behind Noah, took a convenient attacking posture, and asked loudly, "What do you mean by that?" It was no wonder that Ivan's reaction was so intense. After all, last time when Tsukuyumi wanted to kill Noah and his group, she also used the excuse of job. Now that she used this excuse again, it was no wonder that Ivan was so vigilant. You want to know? Tsukuyumi raised her chin and grinned. It's very simple. My employer has changed to this school, and now I am a real teacher. What did you say? Ivan's eyes widened in shock. Could it be that the school plans to hire you to teach us? Ha 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 ha. Tsukuyumi held her stomach and laughed. Her laughter was full of sarcasm. That's right. That's what it is. How? How could this be? Ivan was a little panicked. How could such a ridiculous thing happen? Undoubtedly, the guy who called himself a teacher in front of him tried to kill his own student not long ago. In the end, not only did the school not punish him, but they also hired him to continue to be a teacher. How could such a thing not be absurd? Is it ridiculous? Yu Jianli too put her hands on her waist and shrugged her shoulders, as if she was enjoying Ivanli's performance from the bottom of her heart. I say, Ponytail sister, how ridiculous is this school? Don't tell me you've only just realized it today. Ivan was speechless. Indeed. No matter how you look at it, the school will let the students fight in the entrance ceremony. The loser will be directly driven away. The daily training is more rigorous than the military. And even the school itself is using the students as lab rats for research. No matter how you look at it, it is ridiculous. Making the murderer, Yu Jianli Rabbit, pick up the pointer again. Compared to these matters, it was quite similar to the school council's decision. Only Noah, after hearing Tsukuyumi's words, the sarcastic expression on his face couldn't be concealed, which made Tsukuyumi raise her eyebrows and look at him with deep meaning. Oh, it seems that you know a lot of things, exception. Obviously, Tsukuyumi didn't think that Noah showed such an expression because of her perfunctory words. Noah must have known some inside information. In fact, Noah didn't know anything but guessed something. Don't forget, Tsukuyumi is a surpasser, an existence that can only be created by the Dawn organization. How could the Dawn organization allow the individual who was responsible for their greatest research results to work for others and not control it in their own hands? Therefore, instead of letting Noah believe that Tsukuyumi sneaked into the Dawn organization, sneaked into this school, became a surpasser with great difficulty, and even became a surpasser teacher in the school, but in the end, exposed her identity in order to kill a few promising students, Noah is more willing to believe in his own guess. That is, Tsukuyumi's actions in itself were allowed by the school. That is to say, Tsukuyumi attacking Noah and the others, these students, were all instructed by the school's higher-ups. Otherwise, if Yu saw that the glass rabbit was a spy sent from somewhere else to infiltrate the school to assassinate promising students, she wouldn't have let her actions be so unscrupulous that day just to kill a few students. Unless Tsukuyumi didn't care that her identity was exposed, causing her to be unable to eliminate the more promising students who enter the school in the future. Sure enough, you're not as easy to deal with as those naive brats. Tsukuyumi looked deeply at Noah and curled her lips. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Wait until class later. You'll know whether it's true or not. I just came to tell you, don't make too much of a fuss in the classroom. The chairman's daughter probably won't let such a thing happen. After saying that, Tsukuyumi's temperament changed, the rabbit ears on her head shook, and she threw a coquettish glance at Noah, putting on a sweet and cute appearance as before. You two, don't be late for class. Leaving such a sentence, Tsukuyumi skipped away. That appearance, compared to the fierce and violent appearance just now, was simply a polar opposite. Noah. Ivanli was a little uneasy as he hugged Noah's arm. Don't worry. Noah, who watched Tsukuyumi leave, patted Ivanley's hand and said without turning his head, "Don't care whether what she said is true or not. Looking at her appearance, she won't do anything for the time being. Let's just wait and see." Hearing this, Ivanley's expression relaxed slightly and nodded heavily. Together with Noah, they looked at Tsukuyomi's back that was gradually getting farther and farther away, and didn't say anything else. Just as Yu Jianli too had said, today, the substitute teacher, Three Kingdoms, brought Yu Jianli too into the classroom and announced her return. Of course, other than Noah and Ivanley who already knew about this matter, Julie, Tachaba, Kyujituryu, Kawai Tokasaki, and the others almost attacked Suketsu and Bunny in anger. However, Three Kingdoms seemed to have specially come to the classroom for this moment. Julie and the others only had time to abruptly stand up, but before they could do anything, he stopped them and acted as if he didn't know anything, and let Tsukuyomi continue teaching. On the other hand, Yu Jianli too completely ignored Noah and the others, as if she had completely forgotten that she had tried to kill her own student. Just like before, she pretended to be cute while jumping back and forth happily. This made the people who knew Yu Jianli too's true colors gnash their teeth in hatred. After class, as soon as Tsukuyomi left the classroom, Tachaba, Kyujituryu, and Kue Inokazaki, who were sitting further away, all gathered around Noah's seat. After Ivanley's explanation, everyone finally understood what was going on, and immediately fell into a stifling silence. Tisk, Kue Inokazaki clenched her teeth. It really doesn't feel good to have someone who almost killed me by my side. Kyujituryu nodded heavily, and even Julie, Tachaba, and the others showed complicated expressions. Everyone, don't be afraid. At this time, it was Ivanley who revealed his cheerful voice and comforted everyone. Teacher Little Rabbit is no match for Noah, so she won't dare to act recklessly. Everyone was slightly stunned, and they all looked at Noah who was at ease. Then their tense faces relaxed. Needless to say, everyone agreed with Ivanley's words. Only Noah knew that if he really went against Tsukuyomi, it would definitely be more troublesome than the last time. Chapter 233. Everyone seemed to think that since Noah was able to defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit when he was still at level 1, now that he had reached level 2, the Moonlit Glass Rabbit could no longer be Noah's opponent. However, everyone did not know that even though he had reached level 2, it was still unknown whether Noah could defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit again. Originally, at that time, Noah's level 1 strength was definitely not a match for the Moonlit Glass Rabbit, who was at level V. At that time, the reason why Noah was able to defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit was entirely because he had a killing move like Annihilation Strike that could decide the outcome of the battle, and the leap forward that he had comprehended at the last minute to increase his speed. This was why he was able to kill the Moonlit Glass Rabbit by surprise. Now, the Moonlit Glass Rabbit had already seen the power of Noah's Annihilation Strike. Under the circumstances where it was on guard, it would definitely not choose to fight head-on with Noah like last time. In the end, it gave Noah the opportunity to use the killing move on itself. Therefore, if he were to fight with the Moonlit Glass Rabbit again, Noah could at most rely on leap forward to make himself invincible. If he wanted to defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit, it would not be as easy as last time. Of course, this was under the condition that Noah did not release his true strength. If Noah were to release all of the limited strength in his body, then dealing with the Moonlit Glass Rabbit would not be a problem at all. However, Noah had already decided that he would not release his strength for no reason, unless it was necessary. This way, Noah would have more chances of encountering the same opportunity as when he comprehended leap forward. In other words, Noah wanted to suppress his strength so that he could have the opportunity to improve his skills in realm. Anyway, even if he did not release his strength, that strength would not disappear into thin air, and would even grow on its own. Why not? Therefore, unless the people around him were to encounter a real crisis, even if he himself was in danger, Noah did not intend to release all of his strength unless it was absolutely desperate. However, it was still too early to say these words. At the moment, it was still uncertain whether the Moonlit Glass Rabbit would attack them. In the end, Noah concluded with this sentence. Become stronger. Once I'm strong enough that no one can threaten me, I won't have to worry about anything. The people around Noah were stunned. They looked at each other and nodded with determination. At this moment, a burst of powerful footsteps entered the ears of everyone in the classroom. At the door of the classroom, Lilith, whose color was slightly different from the other students in this school, strode into the classroom, exuding a confident and proud aura, just like when she came to class yesterday. Under the gaze of everyone in the class, she walked into the classroom. It wasn't until she almost reached her seat, which was beside Noah, that Lilith realized that the place was full of people. She blinked her eyes in surprise. Why are you all gathered here? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. After a while, they all revealed nonchalant expressions. No, it's nothing. Orange Bar nodded politely at Lilith, and then held Ya's hand, whose eyes were moving back and forth between Noah and Lilith. Then, we'll go back to our seats first. After that, Orange Bar left with Ya, who kept looking back. Then, we'll go back to our seats too, Kujuriya Totoro said. Just as he was about to leave with Kujisaki Totoro, Lilith's beautiful eyes stared at him with a look of interest. You're that Esper ability, right? Jiojua didn't seem to expect Lilith to suddenly call out to him. After he reacted, he nodded. Yes, I'm Jiojua. Hehe. Lilith glanced at Ninefold Totoro, then smiled sweetly. I'm quite interested in you. Huh? Jiojua was stunned. What did you say? Don't make me say it again. Lilith stopped smiling and shrugged. But unfortunately, my double-tripping blade has decided to be Noah. Jiojua, I hope that if there's a chance in the future, let me see your soul. Lilith didn't give Nine Stacks Totoro a chance to reply and just sat down. She looked as though Nine Stacks Totoro would definitely find a chance to show off his blaze in front of her and let everyone see this beautiful girl's willful side. Jiojue could only leave with Oki, who was in a bad mood, and returned to his seat with a baffled expression. Sorry to keep you waiting. Only then did Lilith turn her gaze to Noah with an unchanging confident smile on her face. It took me a bit of time to get up. Hearing Lilith's words, Noah couldn't help but remember the scene when he woke up. He looked away awkwardly, which made Lilith reveal a sly expression. Listening to Lilith saying that they were like family to Noah, Ivanli, who had the same daily routine as Noah not long ago, was slightly agitated. Julie's ahog on her head also shook as if she was a little shaken. That said, you didn't just take a bit of time, right? Ivanli tried to cheer up. His voice was obviously cheerful. The teacher just finished the first class. You're seriously late. Is that so? Lilith responded to Ivanli's words casually. If it wasn't because Noah is here, I wouldn't want to come at all. You don't want to come? Ivanli was stunned. Is this okay? I've already finished the high school curriculum. Lilith glanced at Ivanli. Moreover, even if I don't come, it won't affect anything. I'm special. Is that so? Even the talkative and amiable Ivanli didn't know what to say at this time. He could only look at Noah for help. According to what you said, I don't seem to have to come to class, right? Noah, who received Ivanli's pleading gaze, could only sigh secretly and suddenly speak. I've even finished all the courses in university. Finished the university curriculum? Ivanli, who received Noah's support, was stunned. Even Julie was stunned for a moment. This time, it was Lilith's turn to show a stunned expression to Noah. However, Noah didn't lie. Still in the world of the Dark Bullet, when Fairy Tail was just established, Fairy Tail didn't have the ability to invite teachers to teach the cursed child. In order to teach those children knowledge, Noah crazily absorbed the content of books for a period of time and wanted to teach the cursed child himself. As a result, unknowingly, relying on his extraordinary memory and understanding, he completed the university curriculum. Therefore, for Noah, the high school curriculum was basically not difficult. It seems that you're not lying. After regaining her senses, Lilith looked straight into Noah's eyes. The next moment, with a calm expression, she uttered this sentence without stopping until it shocked him to death. You're really worthy of being the tripping double blade, who shared the same bed with me. The air suddenly froze. Lilith. Noah was caught off guard. Shared the same bed. Ivanley's mouth twitched, and he showed an extremely reluctant smile. So that's how it is, you have already shared the same bed? Julie's reaction was even more intense. Noah. Julie's dark red eyes also fluctuated. Have you shared the same bed with her? Julie. Looking at Julie, who was emitting a terrifying pressure, Noah asked carefully. That are you angry? Julie didn't answer, but looked straight at Lilith, and then made such a declaration. Even if you are Noah's tripping double blade, I won't give you the opportunity to share the same bed with Noah. Lilith raised her eyebrows and slowly showed an interested expression. Are you declaring your sovereignty to me? Ah. Julie stood up, came to the other side of Noah, and directly hugged Noah's arm. I won't give Noah to you. Huh. Lilith narrowed her eyes. Interesting. Suddenly, extremely intense sparks burst out in the eyes of the two, making Noah's head hurt. Chapter 234. Today's class was particularly lively, not for other reasons, but because throughout the whole day, whether it was teaching ordinary high school courses, strengthening physical fitness outside, or carrying out combat training courses, Julie and Lilith stuck to Noah's side for the whole day. They didn't let Noah out of their sight for a moment. It was understandable that Lilith stuck to Noah's side all the time. After all, as a double-edged sword, the school supported students to establish a good relationship with their partners. Even the dormitory and seats were arranged according to the double-edged sword unit. Inseparable double-edged sword could be seen everywhere. But in this way, the matter of Julie sticking to Noah's side was worth pondering. Because Julie and Lilith constantly engaged in various verbal confrontations today, and kept rubbing against Noah's side, it didn't take long for the real purpose of their actions to spread like wildfire. In order to compete for Noah, that was the purpose of Julie and Lilith. As the saying goes, good things don't go out, bad things spread for thousands of miles. At the age where they liked to gossip, the matter of Julie and Lilith competing for Noah almost spread throughout the school in less than a day, making everyone pay attention to Noah when they saw Noah. Of course, among the students who paid attention to Noah, the girls were just curious and gossipy, but the boys were envious and jealous. Whether it was Julie or Lilith, both of them were not only foreign girls, but also beautiful girls whose appearance was enough to make people stunned. The two girls, one was the quiet moon, and the other was the passionate sun. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the two most beautiful flowers in the whole school. However, with these two extremely beautiful girls surrounding a boy and starting a battle, which boy wouldn't be envious and jealous? Not to mention the boys, even some girls felt jealous of Noah. If it wasn't for the fact that Noah defeated a rank 3 teacher with the strength of an ordinary person at the entrance ceremony, I'm afraid that today, there would definitely be a lot of trouble to find Noah and teach Noah a lesson. However, Noah could only say that he was innocent. Why did such a situation happen? It wasn't that Noah didn't understand. To some extent, Julie had always regarded Noah as the closest person. The reason was also very simple. It was because Noah gave Julie the feeling of Julie's father. For this reason, Julie felt happy from the bottom of her heart for Noah's doting behavior. She often did all kinds of intimate actions to Noah, as if Noah was the closest family member. Among these intimate actions, Julie's favorite was to sleep with Noah. Because not only could this let Julie feel that she had found her father, but it could also eliminate the uneasiness in Julie's heart that had always been afraid of loneliness, and bring Julie a sense of security. For Julie, sleeping with Noah might be the happiest thing in this school. Now, the appearance of Lilith took away the right to sleep with Noah. Julie, who inexplicably had a subtle sense of crisis in her heart, overreacted and confronted Lilith. She even did something that was equivalent to declaring sovereignty. As for Lilith, the reason why she confronted Julie was even simpler. Because it was interesting. This willful miss seemed to think that the interaction with Julie was more interesting than the boring class. So she kept playing with Julie. Among them, it was naturally because Noah was Lilith's tripping double blade. This willful miss was more or less possessive. In this way, Julie and Lilith were against each other for the whole day today. It was fine during the ordinary class, but when it came to the training class, The two girls were all kinds of comparisons and tit for tat. They kept sticking to Noah's side, making Noah really want to say that it was tiring. But this was not the most tiring part. The most tiring part was that because Julie had been sticking to Noah's side, Ivan, as Julie's tripping double blade, could only follow behind Noah. However, he had been looking at Noah with all kinds of cold eyes, fake smiles, and even explicit cold snorts, making Noah feel a lot of pressure. Moreover, for some reason, both Orange Bar and Ye kept a great distance from Noah. Even if they happened to get close to him, they would keep a respectful distance from him, as if they were afraid of being infected by some virus, or coming into contact with something dirty. If this was not lively, what was lively? At least for Noah, today was already lively to the point where it couldn't be more lively. In the end, Noah's patience also reached the limit. Almost all the classes today were announced to be over. Noah didn't even say a word, and directly left the classroom, walking in the direction of the dormitory. Originally, Noah thought that if he returned to the dormitory, he could more or less get some relaxation. Unfortunately, even if it was this opportunity to relax, God seemed to be deliberately against Noah, not giving it to Noah no matter what. Sitting on the edge of the small white table in the center of the room, Noah felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. The young girl, Sarah, who was dressed in a housekeeper's uniform, was diligently ironing her master's clothes with an iron. However, her eyes were fixed on Noah, and did not move away for even a moment. No, rather than saying that she was staring at Noah, it was better to say that she was glaring fiercely at Noah. That look of deep hatred was just short of directly burning Noah's nose with the iron in her hand, until it was as flat as his face. Noah, who endured Sarah's gaze that was as if she wanted to poke 2 holes in his body for half an hour. Not only did he not get the relaxation time he hoped to get before returning, but he also felt that his spirit was more seriously exhausted, and he was so tired that he sighed again and again. It was worth mentioning that even though Sarah had been glaring at Noah, she still completed every task perfectly without making any mistakes. Noah, who was in a bad mood, couldn't find a chance to make things difficult for her. If you have any dissatisfaction with me, please say it directly, okay? Noah, who couldn't bear it anymore, could only meet Sarah's fierce gaze and speak with an unhappy tone. Or is it that as Lilith's housekeeper, you are best at arousing the disgust of others and making your master lose face? Sarah's expression became sinister in an instant. This was exactly what Noah wanted to see. As long as this strange housekeeper was angry at him, Noah had hundreds of ways to make the other party mad and vent his anger. However, Sarah only showed a sinister expression, but she was not provoked by Noah at all. She still remained silent without any change. Of course, if Sarah's eyes becoming fiercer was a change, then this change was definitely huge. Noah only felt that he was really unlucky today. It was fine that he was physically and mentally exhausted from being tormented by Julie, Lilith, Ivanley, and others outside, but he still had to suffer when he returned to his room. Could it be that the moonlight glass rabbit was too arrogant this morning, and even the world couldn't stand it anymore, so it summoned Noah's punishment? If this goes on, when Lilith comes back, I won't have time to rest. At that moment, Noah rolled his eyes, made up his mind, and simply stood up. Sarah, who thought that Noah wanted to leave, showed a moment of relief, but in the next moment, Sarah's whole face froze. Because Noah, who stood up, began to take off his clothes directly. Took off his coat. Took off his shirt. Took off his pants. When there was only a pair of shorts left, Noah put his hand on his shorts and made a pulling action. What are you doing? Sarah finally couldn't stay silent any longer. She almost screamed at Noah. You shameless bastard. Young Miss liking you is the biggest stain in your life. What are you talking about? Noah finally seized the opportunity to take revenge and used all his sarcasm. This is my room. Isn't it normal for me to change clothes in my own room? If you want to change clothes, change in the changing room. Sarah clenched her teeth and squeezed out a voice. It was as if she wanted to tear Noah into pieces, but what she got in return was a light sentence from Noah. Then, are you sure there are no undergarments that Lilith threw around in the changing room? Sarah's breath was stuck in her chest. Chapter 235. Lilith was an out-and-out young lady. Even if he only knew Lilith for less than 2 days. Even if it was a guess. Noah could guess that Lilith, who liked to be naked even when sleeping, would never specially pack her underwear when changing clothes. As a result, the clothes that Lilith changed yesterday were either cleaned up by Sarah yesterday, or they were still piled up in the dressing room, waiting for Sarah to clean them up. Looking at Sarah's frozen expression, there was no doubt that it was the latter. Noah's mouth slightly raised, and he muttered without a trace. But you're right. Even if it's in your own room, you still have to go to the dressing room when you change clothes. With that said, Noah also lifted his feet and walked in the direction of the dressing room. Sarah was suddenly shocked. She didn't even have time to put down the iron in her hand and rushed in the direction of Noah aggressively. Wait! Hearing Sarah's cry, Noah turned his head directly, and then he was shocked by Sarah's posture of rushing over with the iron in her hand. Ah! At the same time, Sarah suddenly staggered and exclaimed. The iron in her hand flew directly into the air, and she fell forward. Noah, who had not expected Sarah to pounce on him, was hit by Sarah, who could not stop in time and fell toward him. Bang dash! He didn't know whether it was the sound of head hitting head, or the sound of body hitting body. Pa dash! With a crisp sound, Noah and Sarah rolled into a ball. They rolled on the floor of the room twice, before coming to a stop, in the standard position of a woman on top, and a man on the bottom. At this moment, the door of the room was neatly opened. Noah, I know you are here. It's not good to hide in the dormitory. Before the word Duan could be uttered, Lilith, who had walked into the room in a very valiant manner, could no longer speak. Perhaps, from the perspective of a third party, one would be able to see what was happening in the room. Because Sarah directly rushed in the direction of Noah, the clothes that belonged to Lilith that Sarah had been ironing were inadvertently shaken off. Together with the clothes that Noah took off in order to trick Sarah, they were scattered all over the floor. In the middle of the room full of clothes, Sarah rode on top of Noah, who was only wearing a pair of shorts. Her face was still full of aggression, and bared her fangs and brandished her claws. On the other hand, Noah clutched his chest with a pained expression on his face. It was like Sarah wanted to do something to Noah forcibly, and took off Noah's clothes. Sarah was stunned. Even Lilith, who had always been confident and proud, was in a mess at this moment. Her beautiful face had an expression, as if she had been greatly shocked. I didn't expect that Sarah, who was so loyal and overprotective to me, would actually do something to my tripping double blade. Lilith seemed to be struggling with something. After a while, as if she wanted to escape, Lilith left the room and closed the door. Noah and Sarah maintained the position of the woman on top, and the man on the bottom, staring at each other blankly. After a long time, in the room, the voice of a man and a woman sounded at the same time. It's not like that. After a while, Lilith returned to the room, and sat down at her fixed seat at the small white table, drinking a cup of milk tea, as if to suppress her shock. So it was just an accident. That's for sure. Miss. Although Sarah was not as agitated as before, her voice was obviously much higher than usual. Obviously, she was quite uneasy in her heart. She even glared at Noah with angry eyes. How could I do something to such a man? Such a man? Lilith blinked. From my point of view, as a man, Noah is quite outstanding. What's wrong with him? Of course, Sarah said without hesitation. This is a person with bad intentions who tried to do something to Mississippi, miss. Please don't fall into his trap. Hearing this, Noah, who had been acting as a listener and listening to the conversation between Lilith and Sarah out of boredom, was enlightened. Could it be that the reason why this housekeeper girl, who had been inexplicably hostile to him since the first time they met, had such a bad attitude towards him, was because of Lilith? Was it because the mistress she served had unexpectedly fallen in love with someone else, and it was a man at that? And as a result, this strange housekeeper had developed hostility towards her? Noah, who understood this, was speechless. Sarah. Lilith seemed to be somewhat helpless. Don't say it as if Noah deliberately approached me. Undoubtedly, the one who deliberately approached him is me. Even so, I think Miss shouldn't take it lightly. Unlike yesterday, Sarah was unexpectedly full of aggression today, as if she had been holding back these words for a long time. The first miss is the daughter of the Bristol family. With this identity, many people will approach the first miss with false feelings. Sarah, do you think I can't tell who's trying to get close to me with false intentions? Lilith sighed. In the end, Sarah, it's all because you're overprotective. This is also for the sake of the young mistress. Sarah replied righteously. Noah, who had been watching Lilith and Sarah argue for a long time without coming to a conclusion, rubbed his eyebrows and interrupted. The so-called Bristol family is referring to your family, right? You don't know? Lilith was startled, and then smiled slightly. That's right. Although the Bristol family is very famous in England, not many people in this country know about it. Lilith said as she leaned forward and showed Noah a confident smile. My family is quite famous in England, and my grandfather is the top manager of the company. Is that so? Noah nodded indifferently. Looks like you're really a daughter of a rich family. Is that all? Lilith supported her chin with her hand and stared at Noah. The Bristol Company is one of the investors of the Dawn Organization. The investor of the Dawn Organization? This time, Noah was surprised, but at the same time, he finally understood Lilith's identity. Needless to say, the founder of Howling Academy was the Dawn Organization. As the investor of the Dawn Organization, the daughter of the Bristol Company, Lilith was also equivalent to a shareholder of the Academy and the organization. In other words, Lilith not only had the unique blaze, but also had an identity that was directly related to the overall interests of the Dawn Organization. Therefore, Lilith was given the title of Special. Therefore, Lilith could openly skip classes and use the phrase, I am special, as a response to skipping classes and exercising other privileges in the academy. Then, since you asked me a question, it's my turn to ask you a question. Looking at Noah's relieved expression, Lilith withdrew her smile bit by bit. Her green eyes rippled as a serious expression appeared on her face. You said that you once took someone's life. Is that true? The atmosphere suddenly changed. It became a little heavy. Noah met Lilith's gaze. Looking at Lilith's rare serious expression, he said indifferently, Don't worry. What are you going to do after knowing? Are you going to stay away from a dangerous person like me? Whether you are a dangerous person or not, it's up to me, your roommate, to judge, Lilith replied, not to be outdone, and her eyes were fixed on Noah from beginning to end. Or do you think you are a dangerous person? You're right. It's up to you to judge whether I am a dangerous person or not, Noah said calmly and glanced at Lilith. I can only tell you that I have never regretted doing that. Noah drank all the milk and tea in front of him and stood up. I'm going to eat first. After that, Noah turned around and walked out of the room. Looking in the direction of the door, Lilith's eyes flickered, and after a while, the corner of her mouth slowly curled up. A man full of secrets will really make people want to dig them all out. Chapter 236. Sigh. As soon as he walked out of the dormitory, Noah raised his head, looked at the sky and sighed. Double tripping blade? Eat together. Live together. Sleep together. Play together. Bear all the difficulties and suffering together. This is the double tripping blade in the school. Noah heard that the reason why the school adopted this system of two people as a unit to study together was because when they successfully graduated from this school and entered the Dawn Organization's way in unit to work, they would also be in two people as a unit to carry out missions. Therefore, in order to adapt to this kind of task execution mode in advance, the school adopted this double tripping blade system in an attempt to cultivate the students' sense of teamwork and cooperation, so that they can perform tasks more smoothly in the future. Just from the fact that they ate together, lived together, slept together, played together, endured all the difficulties and hardships together, and also studied together, Noah, Julie, and Ivanley formed a temporary tripping double blade. That was quite interesting. However, once he and Lilith formed a formal double tripping blade system, this kind of atmosphere was gone. Of course, they were still living and sleeping together. However, Lilith, who liked to enjoy the treatment of a young mistress, or rather, who was used to being treated as a young mistress, usually had Sarah prepare the meals and bring them back to the dormitory to eat. Originally, Lilith also asked Sarah to help Noah prepare 3 meals, but that was rejected by Noah, who didn't like to be unique. In addition, because Lilith had finished her high school courses, and because of her self-willed and special relationship, Lilith would not choose to participate in ordinary classes at all. As a result, Noah and Lilith's tripping double-edged sword relationship gave people a feeling that they were neither close nor distant. But that's not surprising. After all, Lilith and Noah formed a double tripping blade system because Noah's blaze was the same type as her blaze. Apart from that, for a strange man whom she had just met for less than 2 days, at least for now, Lilith didn't have the thought of sharing hardships with him, so she wasn't inseparable from him like a double-edged sword. Noah didn't have any objections to this. The rest of the class had basically experienced the temporary double-blade tripping and the official double-blade tripping for a total of 2 weeks. They had also fought together in the new blade battle, so they had already developed a sense of camaraderie. Lilith, on the other hand, had only transferred to this school yesterday. It had been less than 2 days since she had formed a relationship with Noah. Therefore, there was nothing that could be done about it. It could only be said that Lilith's personal reasons only accounted for a small part, and the rest were objective reasons. I have to think of a way to cultivate tacit understanding and trust with Lilith. Noah couldn't help but say this. He was stunned for a moment and laughed bitterly. Since when did I consider Lilith as a real double-edged sword? The reason why Lilith and Noah formed the tripping twin blades was because Noah had the same type of blaze as Lilith, so Lilith thought that they were the same kind. But only Noah knew that he couldn't be regarded as Lilith's same kind at all. Therefore, after knowing Lilith's purpose of finding him, Noah was ready to remove the double-edged sword relationship with Lilith at any time. He didn't even think about maintaining the double-edged sword relationship between them. In this way, why should he consider the issue of tacit understanding and trust? At the moment, Noah shook his head and threw the irritated feeling out of his mind. Don't think about it, just let nature take its course. With that said, Noah was just about to walk to the cafeteria, but the next moment, he suddenly stopped without any warning. Under the effect of Noah's sensing ability, an aura just came down from the dormitory behind Noah. He didn't walk down from the gate in a dignified manner. Instead, it slowly slid down along the wall from the top floor, as if it had just lurked in the dormitory. It was as if they were lying in ambush for something. Noah suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the dormitory. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, the other party seemed to have noticed that he had been discovered. He jumped up without hesitation, and after a few ups and downs, he immediately flew outside. Unfortunately, what the other party did was equivalent to telling Noah he was a person who couldn't be exposed. Bang! Noah turned around, and without even thinking about it, he suddenly stomped on the ground. At the same time, the stone slabs on the ground cracked, and his figure burst out and chased in the direction of the lurker. It was almost dusk now, so the visibility had decreased a lot. However, even with the effect of vision, Noah and the lurker's speed was still extremely fast. They nimbly crossed obstacles one by one and started a chase. The speed of the two clearly exceeded the human limit. This made Noah a little surprised. Could it be that the other party was also a surpasser? Noah narrowed his eyes, and when his body landed on a tree, he suddenly exerted force on his feet and increased his speed to another level, closing the distance between him and the other party. The sound of an attack from behind made the lurker turn around, and a pair of murderous eyes were exposed in the air. Immediately, the lurker's right hand suddenly swung back and pulled out a weapon. It was a gun. A submachine gun. Noah's figure suddenly stopped. Da-da-da-da-da. At the same time, the lurker did not hesitate to pull the trigger of the submachine gun in his hand. It was as if he wanted to overlap all the gunshots, and the bullets formed a barrage that enveloped Noah like a storm. However, before that, Noah, who had stopped moving, raised his right hand, as if he wanted to use it as a club, and swung it wildly to the side. There was a tree there. Bang! The arm that was swung out heavily hit the tree on the side. Wood chips flew up, and the tree immediately snapped and fell in Noah's direction. And it just so happened that the fallen trees completely covered Noah's figure. Bang, 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 bang. The next moment, accompanied by a muffled sound of something exploding, the bullets of the submachine gun shrouding Noah all landed on the trees. Amidst the muffled sounds, the bullets kept leaving holes on the fallen trees. As for the lurker, not only did he not slow down for a moment because of the shooting at Noah, but he also used the recoil of the submachine gun to rush out a distance, pulling the distance between him and Noah far apart. You have some skills. Noah, who jumped from behind the tree and landed in front of the fallen tree, stared at the blurred figure that was getting farther and farther away. He sneered, then raised his right foot and stomped heavily on the ground. Bang! The incomparably firm ground was actually shattered by Noah's stomp, as if it had exploded. Gravel splashed up. Noah didn't even look at it. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a piece of gravel in his hand. His body suddenly turned, and his arms suddenly swung forward. Whoosh! The gravel that burst out suddenly cut through the air. Although the speed was not as fast as a real bullet, the sound was sharper than the sound of the bullet breaking through the air just now. It was like a meteor shuttling through, flying toward the lurker with incomparable precision. When the lurker heard the sound from behind, he thought it was a sniper bullet. His body burst out with agility that was absolutely beyond the level of ordinary humans. His running body suddenly dislocated and tilted slightly. With his right foot as a fulcrum, he turned sideways in an incredible arc. At the same time, his body was lowered. Whoosh! The gravel that burst out whistled past the lurker's side, just brushing past the lurker's face and flying backward. Because of this, the lurker just happened to see the object flying toward him at the moment when the gravel flew past him. When he realized that it was just a piece of gravel, there was an obvious look of astonishment in his eyes, and there was a brief pause in his body. Whoosh! The sound of the second gravel cutting through the air sounded. Chapter 237. Bang dash. Following the first piece of rubble, the second piece of rubble hit the lurker's right shoulder. Goo dash! As the gravel shattered, the lurker also let out a muffled groan. The body that was already doing difficult movements suddenly lost its balance, fell to the ground, and rolled a distance of 3 to 4 meters. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Noah rushed out and came in front of the lurker that was still rolling on the ground. When Noah saw the lurker's full appearance, even he couldn't help but be stunned. It was because the other party was completely different from what Noah had imagined. Not only could he not see the face clearly, but he also couldn't tell the specific age. He couldn't even tell whether the person was a man or a woman. The lurker that was rolling on the ground was more than 8 meters tall, but its body was wearing a combat suit that looked like a mechanical armor. There was also a helmet on its head. It was just like a robot, and Soren couldn't tell its specific identity at all. However, Noah soon came to the conclusion that the other party was a man. Stinky brat. From within the thick helmet, a male voice that was clearly filled with anger rang out. Immediately afterward, the lurker that was wearing an armor-like combat suit rolled on the ground, stood up, and held the submachine gun in its hand toward Noah. Unfortunately, Noah also reacted from the shock. After seeing the lurker's action, his eyes turned cold. Pa dash. The submachine gun that was just held up by the lurker was instantly swatted away by Noah's hand like swatting a fly. Swoosh! However, at this moment, the lurker's other hand also touched its waist, and it actually took out a cold dagger. It suddenly stood up, and the dagger in its hand drew a cold silver light. Like the fangs of a beast, it fiercely cut toward Noah's chest. Facing the merciless attack from the lurker, Noah hurriedly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and shifted his body backward by a step. A sound like the sound of something being cut rang out. Pieces of cloth also splashed out. Noah, who took a step back with the fastest speed, was still narrowly grazed by the sharp dagger on his chest. Although he wasn't injured, the uniform on his body was cut by the dagger. If the dagger in the lurker's hand was 5 millimeters longer, this crack that appeared on the uniform would also appear on Noah's chest. Moreover, it was accompanied by a large amount of bright red liquid. Obviously, the opponent wanted to kill Noah directly. Whether it was the previous unscrupulous continuous shots of the submachine gun, or this attack, they were all used with the purpose of directly killing Noah. This made Noah's heart finally burst with anger. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll give them a taste of their own medicine. This had always been Noah's most basic action. Since the other party had no intention of showing mercy, then there was no need for Noah to show any mercy. Pong! At that moment, Noah stomped hard on the ground with his right foot, stabilizing his body that was still retreating. His right hand reached out at lightning speed, grabbing the lurker's wrist with great precision, and twisting it hard. Gotcha! A hair-raising sound was heard from the lurker's wrist. Aha! The lurker's scream came from the heavy helmet as his arm was twisted in a direction that normal people couldn't twist at all. Wong! At the same time, Noah's other hand was pulled straight behind his back. His clenched fist suddenly shook, and the space around his fist suddenly fluctuated with a burst of gorgeous light spots. They gathered on Noah's fist and instantly condensed into a bright vortex airflow, wrapping Noah's fist in it. In the next second, the fist that was wrapped in a dazzling vortex of airflow was like a beam of light that flashed in space. As Noah swung his fist, it brought along a sharp sonic boom and landed on the lurker's chest. Dong! A muffled thunder-like sound resounded, stirring up bursts of wind, blowing in all directions. Pung! The armored battle suit on the lurker's chest exploded in a moment, exploding into fragments that filled the sky. Xiao! Under the terrifying power of Annihilation Strike, the lurker's body that was left with only a tattered battle suit flew out like a kite with a broken string, rubbing against the atmosphere. He flew out and hit a rock wall not far away. His body was embedded in the rock wall. Poochie! Unsurprisingly, the lurker spat out a mouthful of blood. Then his head tilted and he fainted. Looking at the lurker who was embedded in the rock wall in a cross like Jesus, Noah exhaled a breath and withdrew his fist that was gradually dimming. He glanced at the torn uniform on his chest, frowned, and then walked in the direction of the lurker. Is he still alive? Arriving in front of the unconscious lurker, Noah quickly heard the extremely weak breathing sound from under the opponent's helmet. His frown became tighter and tighter. Although Noah wanted to use Annihilation Strike as quickly as possible, he did not charge it to the peak, but it still had 60 to 70% of the power of a rank 2 full-strength attack. If such a punch landed on a surpasser, unless the opponent was a rank 4, they would definitely die. Judging from the strength of this infiltrator, the other party had yet to reach the level of a grade 4, at most a grade 3. To be able to survive a Annihilation Strike, with 60% to 70% of its power, the infiltrator's defense was definitely above that of a grade 3. Immediately, Noah's gaze fell on the opponent's tattered mechanical armor-like battle suit. Is it because of this? After pondering for a while, Noah reached out his hand, wanting to check the opponent's battle suit and see the opponent's true appearance. But at this moment, a somewhat nasty voice sounded. Oh, it's better to leave it to me, exception. Noah's hand paused. His originally tightly knitted eyebrows twisted like a rag when he heard this voice. He raised his head and looked at the cliff in front of him. Over there, the young girl, who was dressed like a bunny girl and a pretty maid, crossed her arms in front of her chest. She stood on the rock wall with a posture that showed she did not care that the scenery under her skirt had already been exposed. She looked down at Noah with a mischievous smile on her face. Still as unscrupulous as always, exception. Don't you know how to be merciful? I've already been merciful. Noah retracted his hand, glanced at the girl standing on the cliff, and immediately turned his gaze to the unconscious lurker in front of him. Could it be that he's someone you know? Sakudri-sensei. Although I don't know if this rat knows me, I definitely know him. Sakudri Bunny smiled, but there was no smile in her eyes. It should be said that I know the person behind him. With that said, Sakudri Bunny jumped down. TSK. Sakudri Bunny roughly grabbed the head of the lurker embedded in the cliff and pursed her lips. Is it really steel? Steel? Noah, who clearly heard Sakudri Bunny's muttering, emphasized his tone. What is that? Well, what is that? Sakujiri Bunny turned around and pretended to shrug her shoulders. You just need to know that it's something you don't need to know. Is that so? Noah narrowed his eyes and asked in a lukewarm tone. You're already being targeted, and you still dare to say that it's something I don't need to know? Targeted? Are you talking about yourself? Sakujiri Bunny sneered. You don't have to worry about this. The person this rat is targeting is not you. Not me. Noah was stunned. Let's stop chatting here. Yu Jianli too grabbed the lurker and lifted him up with one hand. Then he leaped onto the cliff. Remember to pay more attention to your surroundings like today. Exception, brat. Leaving this sentence, Sakujiri Bunny left on her own. Noah stared at the direction Sakujiri Bunny left in thoughtfulness. Chapter 238. On the way back to the dormitory, Noah tried to search for steel installation on the internet, but the result was some irrelevant search results. For this result, Noah was more or less mentally prepared, but Noah was still a bit disappointed. Sure enough, it's troublesome to be in an unfamiliar world. If it was in the world of fairy tale, with the reputation of fairy tale, and the power of the Union, if he wanted to get any information, even if it was more secretive, he could generally get it. Even in the world of the Black Bullet, there was the intelligence network of fairy tale that gradually expanded its influence to the whole world. Noah only needed to move his mouth to get the information he wanted. But in this world, Noah was alone. Not to mention the big boss of any force, he didn't even have a friend with a little background. In this case, if he wanted to get any more secretive information, it would be a bit troublesome. How about invading the national database again? But that would most likely only get the project name like last time, right? Noah was troubled as he walked. How about ask Lilith? Since the Bristol Corporation behind Lilith could become the investor of the Dawn organization, it proved that its power was extraordinary. So if he asked Lilith, he might be able to get some answers. After making up his mind, Noah suppressed his conjecture about today's matter and returned to the dormitory. Unfortunately, when he returned to the dormitory, Noah would find out. At the very least, today, he couldn't leisurely talk about serious matters. In the luxuriously decorated room, a depressing silence was pervading. Noah, who had just returned to the room, looked at the scene in the room. The corner of his eyes twitched slightly, and he couldn't stay calm. Not to mention Noah, even Lilith, who was sitting at the small white table, glanced at the bed. After a while, a bitter expression appeared on her face. I didn't expect you to go this far. I underestimated your persistence. Ah, Julie, who was only wearing a white shirt and holding a pillow, sat on the bed with water droplets on her silver hair. It was obvious that she had just finished showering. She stared at Lilith with her deep red eyes, as if she was guarding against something. Even if it's not Noah's double-tripping blade, the right to sleep with Noah will not be given to you. Julie had said this sentence at least 10 times today. It was as if she was telling others about the determination of this expressionless girl, making them speechless. Hey Noah. Lilith, who did not expect things to turn out this way, sighed again. Can't you think of something? Who is to blame for this? If it wasn't for Lilith's blabbering during the day and going against Julie all the time, how could things have developed to this situation? Noah could only swallow this bitter fruit and looked at Julie with an awkward smile. Julie, didn't Ivan say anything when you came here? Ivan said that if Lilith was here, even Noah wouldn't do that kind of thing, so he didn't come with me. After saying that, Julie tilted her head and blinked her eyes at Noah. By the way, Noah, what is that kind of thing? It's something you don't need to know. Under Lilith's somewhat playful gaze, Noah awkwardly avoided Julie's curious gaze. Did Ivan only say that? Ah, Julie first replied, then she seemed to remember something. However, Ivan seemed to be very angry, and he said that he didn't want to talk to Noah for a while. Noah was silent. What do you want? Lilith seemed to have a headache. You don't want to occupy the bed and not let us sleep, right? We only have one bed. After hearing Lilith's words, Noah suddenly woke up and finally realized a serious problem that had been ignored by him. In this room, there was only one bed. The standard bunk bed in the dormitory had been replaced by a luxurious double bed under Lilith's orders. Therefore, yesterday Lilith slept with Noah. Therefore, in the future, Noah and Lilith would still sleep together. Lilith, Noah's voice suddenly raised. As you said, there is only one bed. How can we sleep? Allah, just like yesterday. Just sleep together. Lilith didn't take this matter seriously at all. She curled her lips and looked at Noah with interest. No matter what, you are my tripping blade. Just treat it as a special right for you. I don't need it. The person who said this was not Noah, but Julie, whose hair on her head stood up. Noah just needs to sleep with me. That won't do. Lilith retorted. Noah is my tripping blade. Even if he wants to sleep, he will sleep with me. Then I will join too. Julie said such a sentence with a blank expression. I want to sleep together too. Hearing this, Noah and Lilith understood. They understood why Julie had to bring a pillow. Julie had already planned for a long time. The night came quietly. Noah. Julie, who had been sitting on the bed with a pillow, pulled the corner of Noah's clothes, raised her head, and said eagerly like a cute little animal eager to be fed. It's time to sleep. Yeah. The smile on Noah's face was a bit distorted. It's like announcing a death sentence. Julie tilted her head in confusion. I didn't object to you sleeping with us. Lilith, who was sitting in her exclusive seat and drinking milk tea, closed her eyes. She was wearing pajamas and exuded a leisurely aura. However, this doesn't mean that I will give Noah to you. Julie directly ignored Lilith's words and still pulled Noah's clothes. Her deep red eyes were fluctuating with the light of expectation, making Noah, who still wanted to find an excuse, feel defeated. Sigh. Noah could only sigh, reach out and touch Julie's head. I really don't know what to do with you. Julie's cheeks were slightly rosy, and there was a look of enjoyment in her eyes. Anyone with a discerning eye could see her mood at this time. You spoil this child too much, right? Lilith seemed to be dissatisfied and muttered like this. Immediately, she put down the empty teacup and stood up. Forget it, let's go to sleep. I still have something to do tomorrow. After saying that, without giving Noah and Julie time to answer, Lilith suddenly turned around and took off her clothes. Wait! Noah, who inadvertently glanced over, almost stared his eyes out. After he reacted, he hurriedly said, Lilith, what are you doing? Even Julie's face was slightly red, and she seemed to finally know how to be shy. On the contrary, Lilith, who was directly involved, didn't even turn her head and said matter-of-factly, What do you think I'm doing? Of course it's sleeping, isn't it? Why are you taking off your clothes when you're sleeping? Noah's voice had changed. Didn't I say earlier? Lilith didn't have the slightest hesitation because of Noah's presence and said calmly, I won't be able to sleep with clothes on. While speaking, Lilith took off all her pajamas. Her fair skin and slender back instantly entered Noah's vision, revealing her amazing charm. Noah, who didn't have time to stop her, turned his head to avoid Lilith's direction, but soon his eyes widened again. He saw that Julie, who was staring at Lilith with a slightly red face, stared at Lilith for a while, then unbuttoned her shirt and removed the only thing covering her body. The moment Noah's tender body entered his eyes, he was dumbfounded. Then Julie's voice sounded. I can't lose either. Intuition told Noah. Tonight, taking the initiative would make him completely insomnia and unable to sleep. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.